Hello everyone. Today, a very interesting story awaits you. And before it starts, I would like to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. The stranger is crying too much because he is scared and nervous. He looks confused and his nose is bleeding profusely, probably from the previous blow. The man hangs half off from the top of the roof and tearfully begs whoever is holding him not to abuse him like that. The pagan aggressively denies him. There are teenagers around who carefully observe the events and remember that they had seen a similar sight in the cinema before. Those present are very funny about this situation. The young people scoff at him and tell him to guard his meager powers. The villain says as if the victim is starting to anger him. He explained to the boy that he was very excited when he was smoking and his device broke. He needed the smoking device to receive paid after-sales service. Molodic did not understand at all how he could get it because he is an obedient schoolboy. Tears streamed from his sad eyes. Zabiaka thought that the young man was talking too much, so, without any hesitation, he abruptly took out a penknife from his pocket. The blade had already touched the fabric and made a small cut on it. The pagan was wondering if the young man would now listen to him and fulfill all his orders and whims. Unexpectedly, the girl who was watching the events ordered him to stop abusing the boy. The beauty did not want him to really fall, and everything ended with bad consequences. One of them laughed because he simply had to die in such a case. She considered them bad people and could no longer communicate with them. The young girl decided to immediately call the teacher. A young person with his head held high confidently walked in the opposite direction from the pagans in order to carry out the planned actions. The crippled man sadly recalled that he had paid for his schooling in 3 months. The fabric began to tear off quickly, so the situation took a negative turn. The scoundrel replied that he did not care about money and wanted him to fix his smoking device. In his opinion, it broke precisely because of the new moon, so he had to buy a new one. At that moment, someone abruptly pulled yellow headphones over the ears of the killer, thus distracting the attention of the little criminal. The music began to hit the heathen's ears with all its might, creating incredible discomfort. Because of this, the disgusting young man decided to swear at the person who did this to him. The handsome stranger displeasedly and sternly asked if the minor thief could hear the sounds that were echoing around in his voice. The criminal replied that he could hear him and rudely questioned the young man about his speech. Another explained that he bought them because he heard that these headphones completely cancel out noisy sounds. The old man suddenly, without thinking for a long time, hit him in the face because the heathen wanted to argue with him some more. With a loud sound, the yellow listening devices fell to the ground and immediately broke into small pieces. The scoundrels panicked. They did not understand what was happening to their ears, why the stranger did that, and why everything happened so suddenly and not in their favor. The handsome man decided to lie down on the edge of the roof and put them on his ears again so as not to hear this situation and enjoy his free time after classes. Regardless, it was still too noisy. Taking the device in his hands, he finally realized that one lug was completely broken. And because of such a breakdown, even the best equipment will not work at all. The two people were just debating whether this was the elder of the same famous Magino, and whether he was the student who had been kicked out of the school last year due to an accident. He turned his head to the men and ordered them to take their headphones so that they could urgently contact the service department. The main rebel was so angry with the boy that he decided to sneak up behind him and try to hit him with his stick, swinging it sharply in the direction of the young gentleman with all his might. The old man hit him on the back with all his might and asked how the young man had such an unexpected and powerful attack. Molodic really did not understand why this exile was sleeping on the roof of an educational institution and did not support their bullying of a classmate. In his opinion, he was the best freshman, so he boldly laughed at the handsome man and thought that he could do whatever he wanted. Unexpectedly, the young man put a second heathen in front of him. His face was covered in a lot of blood from the blow. The other weirdo was also standing behind him and was about to take a good swing at him, thinking it would be all over for the poor boy from now on. Unfortunately for him, the handsome man very quickly and sharply repelled his attack, throwing the person a long distance away from him. The main fool was already very fed up with this, so he stood behind him and swung a chair at the boy. The minor criminal again failed to do what he intended, because the young man quickly replaced his friend, who suffered again because of him. The scoundrel, with all the force received from a powerful blow, sharply flew away from the young man in the completely opposite direction. All members of this youth union lay on the floor, not having any strength to fight and abuse. Each of them was bleeding from the nose and very dizzy in the head. He wondered what they were going to do next. He showed them the headphones and said that it was because of them that they were broken. The boy, who had been badly beaten, asked if the tormented student would like to buy him new devices for listening to audio recordings. The old man asked why he needed it. The cripple replied that he just wanted to take the initiative to communicate and be friends with him. The handsome man replied that the young man was allegedly just stupid and a worthless coward, and because of this he was so often beaten and mocked at school. He ordered him to shut up and get out of here immediately so as not to get anything for nothing again. At that moment, they were filmed by a girl who was very surprised by what happened before her eyes. That same night, the beauty, sitting on the bed in her room, decided to find out more information about the mysterious daredevil Magino. Last year, as soon as he came to this educational institution, he harmed several second graders. Management hid the incident, but the fact was that no one knew. Regardless of how you were expelled, you were still able to go to any other school in the district. If you cross 1 or 2 bridges in a day, you will already recognize everyone. Unfortunately, she did not find him either in the messenger or in other social networks, in which young people usually like to sit. In her opinion, he was a ghost man. But despite this, she smiled because she was curious to know who this strange and mysterious Hantae-ji really was. The young woman remembered how she suddenly took a picture of him, but realized that it was just a blurry photo. Despite this, the young lady decided to find him using the internet, image search. She finally found him on a very popular social network. To her surprise, it turned out to be the profile of a real star and not a simple and poor schoolboy. Looking into the phone, she was very focused on what she saw, and after reviewing the entire profile, she began to laugh loudly at such a find. It had already dawned on the street a long time ago, and the young beauty still hadn't gone to bed to rest, so she hadn't slept at all night. It particularly bothered her because all the young person's attention was focused on the studied pages of this mysterious and attractive boy. Looking at his photo, the young person tried to understand whether he was really happy in life, having everything he wanted. She looked at his post about how he looks at his sad eyes in a picture and realizes how different he is from himself in the mirror, feeling like he's seeing himself in a portrait. In the profile, it was indicated that the boy was born on the 10th of May. Then the young lady was very surprised because after looking at the date, she realized that it was his birthday today. Now she was completely satisfied because she found a real star, and now she can quickly find out where he lives with his past number. The young woman knew that this time she would definitely find him. The girl was scared and sat next to the handsome guy at one of the desks in class and listened attentively to the teacher's speech. The man said that it was very difficult to be a freshman, so he told them not to think of themselves as seniors and to have a good time. He turned to Magino and ordered him to come for the form tomorrow. The girl, without thinking for a long time, showed him a photo from her phone and pointed out that they must be too familiar for him. Moladik noted that it was indeed his face, but not his image. She got angry because she didn't understand what he was talking about, because everyone takes selfies, and then she didn't understand whose page it was. The following events will take place at Gyeonggi Samjong High School. The weather was warm and sunny outside. A new school day began. The blonde looked at the young man's posts and considered them good, as for a real one, but he was still disgusted by what he saw. He laughed at his words about the line between life and death. The guy asked the scoundrel to quickly give him the phone and informed him that he had a lot of money. The scoundrel hit him hard in the face and with a sharp wave of his hand threw away the brand new white smartphone of the offended. If he hadn't brought the money today, the criminals would have killed him for sure. They called him smelly and carefully and greedily looked into his thick wallet stuffed with bills. The pagan turned to him mockingly several more times and realized that the amount of cash was still the same, so the loser did not deceive them. The blonde, out of respect for his honesty, spoke as if he had decided to take the money and be done with the bullying for today. He cruelly deceived the unfortunate man and asked him if he thought that he would say that to him after his negative actions. They began to kill him with all their might because they had given an order to bring even more money this time, and he had not fulfilled this order, so he had to be immediately punished for it. The main bandit laughed loudly and said that he did not see how the poor man was beaten and ordered to hit again. In his opinion, the boy has nothing to lose at all, except for the money that his family will provide him with. After saying that he couldn't see, he swung his leg at him, using a strange and powerful technique. The crippled boy no longer had any strength or desire to fight the pagans, who were obviously stronger than him. The heathen called Jin-tae a stinker and ordered him to first keep his eyes level with his face and listen to him carefully. The young man had to bring the other money to the academy tonight, without delay. The blonde guy squeezed his face and told the crippled man not to shine among people, and to call him later if he really didn't want trouble from them. The gang, made up of naughty schoolchildren, cursed and decided to leave the scene of the crime, considering the poor young man to be a complete idiot. Parubik did not understand at all how this mattered. It did not matter in all this because it was not him, but someone else. Magino could not understand at all why she went with him to the roof. The girl could not believe it at all. She remembered how the boy said that the picture was too saturated and it looked like a good student. The beauty still thought they were very similar and wondered if they should know who he was. The young man replied that this makes sense, but he does not understand how it is possible to find a stranger so quickly. The young lady remembered how she had been chased by some pervert before. Later, the police investigated how he found out about her house and why he decided to do this in the first place. The madman in the background of her photos analyzed the place of exit, and thanks to the pictures of friends, he immediately understood where exactly the route was located, along which she traveled a lot. Molodik thought that it was very easy to say about it and did not understand at all how the criminal was engaged in this for a long time, because their country was not small at all, and there were many similar individuals in it. The girl was surprised when she looked at a new photo of this unfamiliar young man in one of the social networks. The young woman realized that she knew where this location was and remembered as if she had been there once before. Unexpectedly, an angry and aggressive man rushed to them, urgently looking for Magino because he had an important and urgent business for him. He asked if that was the boy's name. The new moon realized that they were stuck in an unpleasant situation and it would not end well at all. Unexpectedly, the young, handsome man received a powerful slap on the cheek from the big and strong hand of this aggressive man. The following events will take place in the same school, but already in the office of the director of the educational institution created for young people. The student simply stood in a state of shock from what was happening to him at the moment and decided not to be the first to say a word to the adults and the heathen. The man believed that this was unforgivable, so he ordered him to be transferred to another school right now so that he would not harm his son again. The man in glasses told the head of the educational committee that the victim's parents would naturally be angry because of such a nuisance. He was furious after his speech and immediately pointed to his son's disfigured face. The man knew that he came from the nearest children's center, Nadia, so he asked if this information was true. In any case, in his opinion, they do not receive a good education there. He wanted to immediately call his care center for children without parents and ordered to expel the young man. The man asked how the boy was able to touch his child. Magino decided to first of all apologize for what he had done, but explained that there is a line that cannot be crossed because it can have irreparable consequences. The pagan family was in a state of shock from his strange words. They did not expect to hear this at all. The boy explained that when he sees people who make such a bad and irreparable mistake, he cannot stand by at all. Molodik explained that he cannot act without acting in such a terrible and unjust situation, especially when it is happening right in front of his eyes. After apologizing, he decided to immediately attack the evil head of the study committee, hitting him with all his might. The young people carefully watched as an ambulance drove from the stadium to the hospital and took the family of pagans to the hospital for immediate medical assistance. The girl was surprised by such a blow to the head in the school director's office, which was committed by a boy from an orphanage, moreover, one of the parents of a very wealthy student. She mentioned that because of the video she took on the roof, he probably won't be sued because it showed the story of how the bully bullied a poor classmate. The beauty believed that he would be forced to transfer anyway because she would pass this video to the Department of Education. Magino replied as if the young lady was not obliged to do this at all, and then there would be no problems. The young man replied that in any case, he would have to go to preparatory school next year because of the situation that had developed in his life. This was not at all surprising because he was a newborn child who was thrown under the door of an orphanage without even a name, having only an approximate date of birth. The girl asked him to wait because the real star they were watching closely now looked like a well-to-do young man. The nun asked him why the boy wanted so badly to find his biological parents and explained that they had never even tried to look for them. He was also surprised by the fact of his date of birth because they clearly matched each other, creating new facts for reflection. The girl was very surprised because she assumed that it could just be his double, which could lead to bad consequences. She begged the young man not to look for him because he will die when they meet in life, because after that they will not be able to exist together in this world. Magino inquired as to what the young lady was doing tonight, for he needed her to stay with him, for she was necessary to him. The beauty asked if he wanted to meet her. He did not understand her words at all because he had in mind a completely different proposal. The young girl asked him if the boy really planned to find him right now. Melodic reminded that she knows where this place is from the photo, so without her help, he will not be able to cope with it. He asked if it was far and if the place in the photo was in Busan. The girl replied that the journey would take about 2 hours, depending on which way they decided to go. The girl said that it would be midnight when she returned and she would have to call her mother. Magino informed her that she was going to class, but the girl replied that it was none of her business. In his opinion, it could actually be a falling song, but the boy wanted very much to find the stranger to confirm or reject this theory. He remembered the evil master's words about the Nadia Center, where he had spent his entire life, and the education that the children received there. Parabok believed that if his guesses were correct, then perhaps they would be able to find the reason why his life was not so easy from the very beginning and turned out exactly this way. The boy explained as if it didn't mean he wouldn't hate himself, but sometimes he actually thought about it when he was alone. He wondered what would happen if he grew up in a good family with loving parents, like the young man in that photo. The following events will take place in a large house. It was dark and deep night on the street. The father said that the child was late. The young man agreed because he finished school late due to extra classes. He really wanted to ask about his mother, but there was no need to ask such obvious things because the answer was always the same. He was sure that, as usual, she went to the shops for fashionable novelties in order to lose herself and drink expensive alcohol. The guy got nervous and wished his relative a good rest. Unexpectedly, the man turned to him sternly and frighteningly. Father asked what day it is today. The young man answered that today was his day, but he didn't have time to tell because the master interrupted him because he wanted to hear a specific answer. The man reminded that today is the day when he receives the school report card, so it already meant something bad. He said that he just met with his class teacher and received the document personally, so he knows everything that he considered necessary for the role of a good relative. The man approached his son and sharply grabbed him by the shoulder. He could not at all believe that he was in 9th place in the ranking of the school because it did not coincide with his hopes and desires. The man assured that he will continue to skip number 1 until he completes his studies at an educational institution. He was interested in how a young man could go to a medical institute with such success. The father did not understand at all why he decided to send him to this bad school because every time he became more and more disappointed in his son's actions. In his opinion, the child now needs even more mental load in order for him to become the best. With these words, he began to take him down the stairs. Hunched over, the young man walked forward with bare feet and looked very upset, because this was not the first time this had happened to him. Unexpectedly, the relative decided to throw him on the floor by his shoulders. The young man suddenly fell to his knees, speechless in fright. The man reminded him that he should think well of himself, as he usually does. He said goodbye to him until the next day and was already preparing to leave the basement. After his speech, the mad father slammed the door behind him, shutting the young person in a dark and cold space. In complete despair, the young man remembered the bad and terrible words spoken in his direction during this bad day. The young man was in complete despair from such a negative turn of events. Unexpectedly, he heard a new message on his phone. The bad blonde blackmailed him again, demanding money for the secret video, which he had to deliver in the next 20 minutes. Perubok looked very confused and frightened by such conditions. Bitter tears of despair flowed rapidly from his eyes. The following events will take place in the night metropolis. The big city has already actively lit its evening lights. The girl asked Magino to do everything faster because she told her mother that she would be late because of lessons. She realized that the place they were looking for was around here. She recalled that she had not left Seoul for a long time to other cities in her country due to studies and external circumstances. The young woman called the young man here because this was the place that was in several photos that were in the profile of the mysterious guy. The beauty asked him if he thought it was the right street. The answer was positive because he thought so too. The girl realized that she really wanted a drink. The old man immediately agreed with her because he was already tormented by thirst. He decided to go get drinks at a nearby coffee shop and asked her what kind of coffee she wanted to drink at the moment. A young lady asked to order her an Iceberg Costa Rica Guatemala drink and a Zavala Rainshine Blend Valley coffee. The cashier asked if she could take a new customer's order. A long queue had already gathered behind him, waiting for him to finally decide to choose something. Unexpectedly, standing at the cash register, the guy was very confused because something went completely wrong due to the type of coffee that the young lady chose. The old man realized that out of everything the young lady mentioned, only the word ice was mentioned. Because of this, he decided to go back and ask Haniji what the exact name of her drink was that she wanted to order so badly. Magino was very surprised because when he approached the place where they had stopped before, he did not see the young woman. She seemed to have disappeared without a trace. At this time, a crippled boy is running barefoot through the crowded streets of busy Seoul, trying to regain consciousness. Panic reigns in his eyes, and he rushes with all his legs to a scary and very dangerous destination, not having any strength to fight. In the messenger, the heathen wrote a new message in which he ordered him to go straight to Starbucks, taking the money with him. In the end, the young man managed to run to the coffee shop. His face was filled with fear and worry because of what was happening to him. At the top of the building, someone loudly begged to let go and not touch himself. Something wrong was happening on the roof because they tried to take someone hostage. The girl ordered the minor criminal to let her go. The heathen laughed at her words, drawing the attention of his friends to the young person. The boys were surprised. The hideous blonde asked his friend what kind of beautiful girl she was, and where she came from, and why he was keeping her. Another suggested that it must be Mrs. Stinker because the two of them were very nice to each other. The blonde asked not to tell him about it. Haniji got very angry and called him a crazy and foul-smelling person in response to such an audacious attitude towards her person. Without thinking for a long time, the young bandit grabbed her head because he did not understand how he could court a girl if he ordered him to bring money, which was the first thing he should have thought about. The second suggested that the crippled man could bring her instead of the required amount and offered to take her to a quiet place so that he could do whatever he wanted with the beauty. The pagan promised to become good friends with her. Unexpectedly, he dug into the chest of the young man who seemed to appear out of nowhere. Magino looked very angry because of the situation that was happening with his girlfriend. He looked intently into the eyes of this hideous scoundrel. The criminal was very confused and wanted to try to turn to him with a smelly face, but could not. The boy hit this underage bastard with all his might. The bandit did not expect such a course of events, so he looked surprised and confused. The blow was so powerful that it was thrown in the opposite direction with all its force, causing physical damage. The other promised to quickly deal with the young man, so he decided to sharply and aggressively attack him to prove his invincibility. The young man also easily repelled this attack by the worthless slayer, only causing great damage to the heathen. The blonde, standing behind him, decided to swing in his direction, trying to take revenge for such a negative act towards his friends. Unexpectedly, Magino grabbed his cheeks with his big hand. He tried to find out from the criminal who this stranger was. The answer he received was that it was now only a stinker, and there was no more useful information from his incomprehensible speech. Not satisfied with this turn of events, he pushed his face to the floor with all his might to show who was really in charge here. The crippled boy was quickly climbing the stairs. His feet were bleeding profusely, but he stubbornly continued on his way. Finally, the young man managed to get to the roof of a tall building. He lost the meaning of life and had only one thought that would change his life and get rid of his problems. The juvenile thieves lay on the floor without the strength to continue the struggle. The boy once again asked the scoundrel what he used to call him. He pressed the blonde's jaw even more and asked about the unknown stinker to find out more information about the doppelganger. The thief was in complete panic, was confused, and could not even answer him because he did not expect such a turn of events. Magino again aggressively and angrily asked loudly what his name was and what they called him in their variation. The man believed that the young man should think about himself and his behavior as usual, so he said goodbye to him until the next day, so that he would suffer alone again. Immediately after his speech, the father closed the front door with a creak. There was a loud sound, which made the young man shudder and was very scared because he was very afraid of his relative. At that moment, Mr. quickly called his father-in-law. He promised him to come over right now to discuss urgent matters with Faith. Unexpectedly, it turned out that the passage did not close after all, and a ray of light made its way to the poor young man, which hinted that he had a chance to get out. The following events will take place at Myeongchang Hospital. It had been dark outside for a long time, and the city lived in night mode. Someone spoke confidently and sternly about how he had lunch with the head of the Lee Jin-tae school today. It seemed to some that times were no longer the same as before. An honest society, equality of opportunity and all that, although there were only dogs and pigs everywhere that spoiled life. According to the man, if his rating continues to fall as it is now, it will be difficult for the principal to write a recommended letter to Hanguk University because of his grandson, which may break their plans. The old man remembered that when he became his son-in-law, he wasn't even a doctor. He believed that it was his mistake, because it did not coincide with his wishes. He remembered how the little boy constantly gets into school disputes because he is ugly, except for his height. He was interested in how inferior a child can be, studying in such an educational institution. The man replied that he was very sorry for such events, which brought such a negative impact to his family because of his studies. In order for him to be able to go on the right path, he assured that his father would definitely send him to a medical institute. The man begged his father-in-law to believe him and not to worry about such trifles. At this time, the young man, beaten by life, walks up the stairs towards the exit, despite the weakness in his body, which is bleeding and no longer has any strength to fight. Finally, the man manages to get to the roof of his building, despite his bloody legs, which caused great discomfort. Completely despairing, the young man climbs to the edge of a multi-story building, gathering his thoughts for a further decision. Memories begin to emerge in his head that have completely traumatized and crippled his life, taking away his will to live. In the end, he was catching up with the hope that at least his photos, which he will now upload, will have a real meaning and not a pretty picture on the internet. In his opinion, the images from the publication will definitely prove his worthless and difficult existence in this world. He looked at the number of his followers and wanted at least one person who followed this acanthus to remember him. He didn't want to be smelly, but after these words, he dropped the smartphone from his hands directly into the abyss. The device flew down rapidly and completely crashed. Magino was still dealing with the blonde scoundrel, pinning him completely with his back to the ground. The boy was interested in only one question. What was his name in the form of the same mysterious stranger, the truth about which he so wanted to know? The minor thief was bleeding and could not say a word because of the fright, due to such a negative course of events. The old man aggressively reminded the scoundrel how he called him smelly and considered him worthless. The blonde apologized and promised never to call him that again. Molodik was only interested in one and the same question. Eventually, beaten and exhausted from such powerful and aggressive abuse, the bully named him Jin Jin-tae. Unexpectedly, the girl grabbed the blonde's hand. Magino could not understand what she was doing and what she wanted to achieve. The young woman brought the mobile phone to her finger in order to use it to unlock this electrical device. She actively searched for the desired name in the contacts of the device, but everything in the search bar was empty because such a name was nowhere to be found. Finally, she found his phone number, which was signed as Smelly, which meant disrespecting and mocking the schoolboy. In her opinion, it was a really suitable nickname, but she did not understand what was happening at that moment in the company of these young thugs. The young lady said that these people don't need to know if someone who looks the same has appeared. Parabok agreed with her opinion because he understood that it would not lead to good. After checking all the belongings of the heathen, she found a school textbook on higher mathematics, written according to a new program, thanks to which she learned more information about the heathen. She was finally able to understand that these disgusting and worthless people studied at Samcheon High School. The guy offered to leave the scene, but the girl unexpectedly decided to stop him because she had something in mind. She obviously couldn't leave things with this heathen just like that, so she had to take revenge for such bad behavior towards her. Without thinking for a long time, the young person kicked the blonde with all his might, causing him incredible pain. Han-ji didn't understand how this disgusting boy could touch her, so she added that she wasn't done yet and decided to do something else. After her speech, she decided to reach into his pocket, quickly looking for everything she needed. She took the money, saying as if it would be her compensation for the moral injury caused. Magino asked if she was sure she could take the money. She assured him that everything was fine, and it was as if he had clearly gotten the bills from doing something bad to the other poor schoolboys. Meanwhile, a dark night has fallen in the city. An expensive black car was moving quickly along the highway, as if someone was clearly in a hurry to an important and urgent meeting. The bad lord was clearly enraged at such a bad turn of events, which spoiled his mighty plans and only added to the immediate problems. He mentioned that he lives with the beautiful daughter of an old, rich man who only knows how to spend money and think of new things. In his opinion, he was the one who cared about his son, and the only one in the family who raised him so well throughout his life. After looking more closely at the window, the man became even more angry because he did not expect to see such a thing in front of him. At that moment, the crazy gentleman remembered that he had forgotten to close the door after leaving the basement, so something bad could happen. He ordered the driver to stop immediately and quickly pack the car. The frightened employee agreed with his order because he had no other choice. There was a terrible sound from the sudden stop of the car, while the young people calmly walked down the sidewalk after what had just happened to them. The man quickly opened the door, but at that moment his phone rang loudly, confusing the madman. It was an all-too-important call from his boss at the company he ran, a secretary named Kim. The employee was very confused, so he angrily asked if something urgent or bad had happened. Pan replied that there was trouble with the young heir Jin Tae. Someone was very angry and asked if the other person considered this incident to be an excuse for everything that happened on the roof today. The blonde bent over from the piercing pain. The head prankster asked if Cho Min-gu couldn't stand up straight like normal people do. The heathen called them all worthless nerds and ordered them not to lose money at least this time. The juvenile delinquent burst into tears and explained that something was wrong with the boy because he had dealt with them all without being injured. The young thug said that they would all be corpses, but his speech was interrupted by another who asked him to stop immediately. The criminal remarked that, allegedly, in children's fights, if you make a mistake with one blow, even a good-looking guy can be easily defeated quickly. He understood everything, so he ordered the little bandits to immediately find this scoundrel in order to take double revenge. Zabiaka asked if they had heard the words of Mr. Now. They had to run to find their way from the entrance of the school to the classes that the stinker attended after the main classes. Gu Chel said to call him as soon as the young thugs find the culprit. The boys answered as if they understood his instructions, so they would do everything immediately. The young people were finally able to reach the Samcho Educational Institution. In the girls' opinion, the Jintae school should have been located in this location. Magino noted that something was clearly wrong with the building. It seemed to him that the young man should have studied at a school for rich and well-to-do children. Han Iji noted that this place was not the best option for the mixing of the wealthy and the poor. They said that it is really scary here, and in this area they do not study, but only some attend courses. The guy wondered where the young woman got this little-known and secret information. She replied that she found out about it through the local mom cafe, the gossip place at school. Fortunately, it updated automatically, so she had something to say, but she couldn't because she was almost hit by a car at that moment. The old man tightly pressed her to him to save her from a collision and asked the young lady to beware of cars. Unexpectedly, emergency medical aid stopped behind them. Young people could not understand what was happening at that moment. Moladik could not understand at all what the medical car was doing around the building at this time. They decided to approach this place closer to find out what happened after all. The doctors were circling the flower bed as if something very terrible had happened. The girl could not understand whether anyone was hurt at that moment. The broken phone lay on the floor while someone ordered the body to be lifted carefully and was already urgently calling for help. Haniji and Magino were in complete shock at what they had just seen right before their eyes. The young lady could not understand who this victim was, and the young man could not believe it, assuming some opinion. The young man carefully looked at the schoolboy's body because he suddenly suspected something when he saw his face. The police officer warned that the students cannot just enter here because they do not have legalized permission to do so. The doors of the ambulance quickly slammed shut and the men ordered to set out urgently to save the young man's life. The young woman offered to just leave and not look at this terrible sight. She wanted to try to recruit a stranger to find out the whole truth. No one ever answered the call, which could mean the phone was turned off or simply not working. Unexpectedly, the policeman managed to notice near the device a school-embroidered element with the name and surname of this unknown suicide bomber. Taking a closer look, he realized that it was the personal patch of the same Jinjin tea he had been so actively searching for. Having collected all the details, the boy, without any hesitation, began to follow the ambulance, which had already left on the provided route. The memory of the appearance of the mysterious person immediately came to his mind. He could not believe what he had just seen with his eyes. Molodik, without thinking too much, decided to run after the car. The girl did not understand what was happening and where he was running away from her. The young lady called him, but the young man did not seem to hear her and continued to try to catch up with the car as if he understood something important. Magino stopped, no longer having the strength to chase, and loudly asked the doctors to stop and wait for him. He really wanted the ambulance to stay put for just 1 second, if only he could make it. Unexpectedly, someone tried to attack him, but the attack was completely unsuccessful because the young man had a very quick reaction. The heathen was very surprised and considered the repulsed attack to be something cool and not at all usual for him. He asked in surprise if the worthless stinker deflected his unexpected blow at that moment. The company of juvenile delinquents still found him and promised that he would become just a corpse, because they could finally deal with him. One of them decided to call Gu Chol, informing him that the pagans had found him. Another asked him to wait a second until he did what he wanted. In his opinion, he should first quickly deal with this loser. The pagan was clearly very confident in his abilities, so he considered himself invincible. Unexpectedly, the boy was not confused and ordered the criminal to get out of the way until he blew everything around, causing great damage to those present. The driver, who was driving a black, expensive car, quickly parked it in front of the entrance of a huge, beautiful building. A subordinate of the family urgently called Sir to him. The man asked what happened to his son today. He was told that the guards had found a young man on the school grounds. The father wondered what they had decided to do with it to hide the incident. The secretary reported that the operation is currently underway. The director asked if the police had said anything about the incident. Molodik replied as if he had already worried about everything, so there was no extra stress for worries. The guy replied as if no one knew about this situation, not even his wife was aware of the events. He asked whether the gentleman should transfer the child to his father-in-law's hospital immediately after the operation. In his opinion, in order for Jin-tae to be able to take the place of his father-in-law, he will definitely send him to medical school to complete everything according to the plan. The director asked if the secretary really wanted to see the end of his career. To begin with, he ordered to connect him with the chief manager of the medical hospital. The guy is lying on the operating table under artificial respiration, completely unconscious, and has almost no signs of life. The man is upset and nervously sitting near the operating room, bowing his head in sadness and trying to collect his thoughts. The subordinate announced that he had prepared all the necessary money for the head of the educational institution as he had requested. In his opinion, now you should not worry about this part of the situation. The madman asked whether the school security had actually found his son. The answer to his question was positive. Because of this, he ordered the car to be prepared, because he needs to get to the scene. The father was very angry with his son because he did not understand at all why he had committed such a nuisance, completely ruining his grandiose plans. He believed that his child was fully equipped with everything necessary for a good life, so there should not be any problems. In front of Magino stood a company of juvenile delinquents who threatened the boy that they would now turn him into a corpse because of what he had done to them. Everyone asked each other if they had seen how the young man flew away from a powerful and strong blow. In their collective opinion, Ji-won's power was no joke. Everyone noticed that the young man quickly blocked the blow. It was also noticeable that his hands were shaking very much from this. One of the zombies suggested that something was clearly wrong here, and now he did not look at all like the poor man he used to be. They assumed that he was secretly training because of their bullying. Despite this, the company was sure that now the most important would attack him brutally, and their stinker would once again return to his insignificant place. The scoundrel apologized, because his mistake was that he entrusted this matter to the unintelligent and stupid person Min-gu. According to the bad guy, he should teach the boy the same way he did before, returning everything to the normal state of things. The heathen remembered that they had a lot of common and not very positive memories, and probably the boy had forgotten everything since then. Juvenile criminals decided to remind the young man of those times and unexpectedly punched the young man in the face, trying to cause physical damage. It was noticeable to those present that this time the blow was much stronger than in the previous attack, which he made while mocking the schoolboy. Unfortunately for the young bandit, it was a failure as Magino easily fought off his attack without even tiring. The scoundrel could not believe his eyes because of what had just happened to him in this place. Parabok wrapped his arm around the slayer and confidently restrained his impulses. The pagan was angry because he wanted to fight with him with the help of force, and this did not suit him at all. The young person clearly thought seriously about something when he restrained the fist of this criminal. He squeezed his bones even more because he understood that the ambulance was unlikely to turn around at this moment to help some nobody. The scoundrel groaned loudly in pain and cursed because of such a negative course of events from the side of the young man towards him. Unexpectedly, Magino decided to make the decision to simply throw the scoundrel away from him, using maximum force. He crossed the scoundrel's huge hands between himself and confidently, without making any effort, squeezed them with his palm. The criminal asked if they had gone to the hospital. He wanted to say that it was nonsense, but his speech was abruptly interrupted. The old man twisted him with all his might so that the thief moaned loudly from the unpleasant feelings that overwhelmed him. In the end, the young gentleman decided to push him away from him with all his might, using all the strength he had at the moment. He called him bad and uncultured words and kicked him in the face with all his strength. Zabika fell headlong, no longer having any strength to continue the fight and confirm his high status. One of the members of the bad company suggested that he was performing powerful tricks in the air, but the other objected, saying that the acquaintance was simply flying from weakness. The body of the young criminal fell loudly on the floor so that everything around him shuddered violently. Saliva and white foam poured from the mouth of this unkind young man after such aggressive abuse. The blonde realized that this girl, whom they had seen last time near the coffee shop, had been with them all this time. He wondered why she was hiding behind him like that cowardly rat. It seemed to the pagan that he finally understood everything. Very strange and loud sounds were heard. Behind Magino, someone asked loudly if he would finally be released. The little bandit cursed and ordered the young woman to quickly release his luxurious blonde and perfect hairstyle from her hands. The young lady confidently continued to hold his blonde hair, with the help of which she effortlessly lowered the scoundrel's head to the floor. She remembered that she had already punished him before, so she asked him if he wanted to receive more due to his merits. The girl warned that this time he would be really unlucky. The two bandits started running quickly towards her. Haneji ordered them not to approach and threatened them as if they didn't want her to completely pull out their friend's hair. After her speech, she ran sharply and quickly to the front, holding the blonde's locks in her hands, thereby pulling the heathen with her. Without thinking for a long time, she slammed his head against the metal post so hard that there was a loud sound. The other members of the evil organization could not believe that such a thing could happen to their friend, and also at the hands of an ordinary girl. She supposed that she was finally free of strange and disgusting questions from these disgusting telepaths. The young woman asked if the boy thought that she would be a burden for him. He answered positively, but it was not important now, because it was necessary to get to the hospital urgently. Haneji asked why exactly he ran after the expressway then, and what did he still find at that playground on the day of the tragedy. Magino slowly, and not at all confidently, took out the school's name-stitched square of the boy from his pocket. Unexpectedly, the bandit noticed this movement and realized that this student badge belonged to the wanted Jin Jin Tie. The minor thugs tried to appeal to Gu Chol, but he did not want to listen to them at all and called the teleps useless and unintelligent fools. Han-e-ji was furious, so she questioned what else they wanted to do with them and why they didn't want to leave here. She wondered if they were really just trying to tease them for attention. At that moment, the bandit swung with great force and punched the poor girl on the delicate and small face. The young girl suddenly flew away with her back to the floor, and he cursed at her and called her a pesky toad that interferes with their plans. He was very curious if it was actually Jin Tae himself who took out all the villains from this union, and how he could do such a thing. In his opinion, it was strange but even similar to the truth. He compared it to a movie in which he suddenly gains great power for nothing. Unexpectedly, the boy, without any thought, swung and sharply and confidently attacked the scoundrel with all his might. Unfortunately, he managed to escape from the attack, so he remarked that interrupting people, in relation to others, is not polite at all. The boy was very angry, so he quickly repeated his blow again, but this time he hit the target clearly, causing him physical damage. The bandit tried to quickly come to his senses and could not believe what had just happened to him. The scoundrel was very angry and already wanted to take cruel revenge on the young man for such disrespect towards him. Unexpectedly, the thief took out a small, sharp knife from his jacket and was about to urgently attack the young man. Gu Chel pointed a sharp blade towards him and ordered him to die immediately from the powerful action of his invincible hands. As the scoundrel closed his eyes and smiled, Magino easily moved behind him to do what he had in mind. At that moment, a suspicious, large, black and very expensive car was rapidly approaching all the participants of the event. The scoundrel considered the boy crazy and very strange, so now he was wary of him because of everything that had just happened. The criminal did not understand at all what was happening at the moment with them in this place. Molodik stood confidently right in front of the huge car, and the bright headlights dazzled his eyes. Unexpectedly, Jin Tae's father himself got out of the car, clearly coming to pick up his tortured son. The first bandit could not understand who was standing in front of him, so he complained to the other that he almost died at the hands of a nobody. The second replied that he was sure that this stern gentleman was a rich relative of the smelly one. Magino couldn't believe that right in front of him at that moment was the father of his real doppelganger. He wanted to guess something, but the man was already walking quickly and confidently in his direction, clearly following his plan. As soon as the madman finally approached the boy, his expression changed significantly after what he saw. He was very interested in what really happened in this place and at this time and why his child was connected with it. The boy was very confused and could not even say a word because of the strong shock received from the whole situation that happened recently. Pan was interested in what the company of these disgusting and poor heathens, who were the most bad example for him, was doing next to his son. He also asked what exactly happened to the girl who was lying on the floor completely unconscious. The father asked whether they did not cause him severe physical or moral harm and whether they did not leave any wounds on his body. The old man was confused and barely answered that everything is fine with him now, and he did not receive any injuries that were associated with juvenile bandits. The man hugged his son tightly and spoke as if he was very happy that everything was okay with him and that his only child was unharmed. He said he would be in real trouble if he was even a little bit late. Magino did not understand whether the master could distinguish him from his relative. After his sentimental speech, the madman smiled, as if he had decided to do something to the young gentleman. In the next image, there is a party of bandits where someone plays various games or fights with each other, while others are helpless and the victims lie tied up in front of them, huddled in a corner. A huge and strict man joined the meeting with his team, which consisted of 5 people and looked very powerful. The man announced his presence, but received a response that he didn't see a young thug named Gu Chol at the meeting. Someone suggested that he heard that one of his minions was involved in something very bad. In his opinion, this is exactly what he is dealing with now, so he is not present at this meeting. The stranger answered, as if a strange feeling did not leave him all day. The man asked if he thought something had happened that could cause him serious harm. The strange man cut himself with the thorns of a flower, but assured that everything was even fine, because that was what he wanted. He was sure that some news would make his insides shake violently, and he hoped that something incredible would happen that would definitely surprise his person. The madman yawned widely because he was very bored and asked if he thought that something might happen in the near future. The gentleman immediately offered the sir a very large amount of money so that he would forget everything that had happened in the coming hours. The man asked whether those present understood what exactly was being discussed and what he was so actively telling them. The policemen did not hide their joy, but answered as if they fully understood his words and orders. Crazy hoped that the chairman and the director would cooperate with him. Their answer was positive. One of them did not think that anyone but them would know about this case. The old man replied as if he knew his father-in-law, but despite attention to this, he is the only one who so actively provides them to school. The gentleman thanked the chairman for such a sincere speech. The director carefully asked whether the boy's operation was successful because he was a little worried about the health of the smart student. The madman asked the old man to just do what he tells him. According to him, Jin-tae will definitely return to the educational process soon. The guy is nervously driving along with the secretary in the car, and an unconscious young lady is lying on his lap. It is already evening. Finally, the heroes manage to reach the huge Shinsung Medical Hospital. A woman shouted loudly and asked where her daughter was. The distraught father was also supporting her, so he also looked excited and scared. The girl's parents were very worried and tried to understand what had happened to their child during this time. The girl was calmly sitting in the ward, talking to the doctor, when her mother unexpectedly ran into the room. The lady was wondering if everything was okay with her, because she did not think that she would be so seriously injured there. Dad remembered that they said that he would stay after the academy, but he completely understood how she ended up in the hospital. Haneji looked confused and asked the relatives present who they were, pretending that she had just lost her memory. The girl's parents were very scared for her. The doctor said that her tests were normal and maybe it was normal shock, so they should have gone home and given the young person a good night's rest. The mother did not even know what their family should do now. The sly young lady smiled widely behind her. Relatives asked how exactly she got to this place. The woman answered as if she came here with the student by car. Everyone was interested in only one question, namely where this young man went. Magino watched through the glass as his doppelganger was unconscious and only existed with the use of artificial respiration. He remembered the moment when he saw his body after the fall and realized that he could not be wrong in his strange guesses. The man was standing behind him and assumed that he was not at all surprised by such an unexpected turn of events. The boy replied as if he could say the same about him and asked if he really did not understand his words and hints. The madman hugged him. Molodik did not understand what he was up to because the pagan knows for sure that he is not his son because he was on the border between life and death. The gentleman replied that it was not so easy to explain, so he offered to go straight to the point. He said that at this point in his life, the boy would be his real son. The man smiled slyly and called the unfamiliar young man by the name of his own child, Jin-tae. Magino laughed loudly because he did not understand what nonsense he was telling him so confidently. The father replied that there was nothing to laugh about, and now he was in trouble because of this boy. Molodik was interested in how exactly he was related to this young man who almost ended his life, but still remained alive. The madman replied as if it shouldn't concern him, and if he cared, then he should accept his offer. Immediately after, he ordered him to pack his things for the weekend and come to him. The boy clearly understood that such a person could not be his natural father, because real relatives would never talk to their children like that in their lives. Parabok was clearly not going to look for his real biological family, but just wanted to make sure that such a development of events could not happen at all. He did not care at all what would happen to this weak young man and realized that there was nothing more to do here. Magino was tired of carrying complete nonsense, so he offered to end their conversation because there is no desire to have at least some common business with him. The madman just smiled back at him and called his son's name. After that, he said that he was waiting for their next long-awaited meeting. The man believed that the gods themselves would direct the new moon to him. The secretary replied that he was going to carry out their plan right now and announced that the investigation was also in full swing. At night, he managed to call the class teacher, Jin-tae. The teacher replied that nothing had happened apart from the drop in the rating of the special student, so he probably didn't know anything at all. It clearly seemed to the subordinate master that he could be bullied at school by his peers or bad classmates. In any case, he promised that he would follow this situation. The director spoke as if that was enough. He wanted to see this doppelganger, so he ordered him to be brought. In his opinion, for boys, a fight is a common and everyday thing, although, on the other hand, he would not be able to win against those bullies. The father considered his son a complete weakling and worthless compared to these disgusting teenagers who could kill him. It was already evening outside. A large metro station could be seen not far from the boy, which he confidently approached. Parabox scans the ticket for passage on this type of transport and is clearly thinking about today and everything that has happened during this period of time. He was very much interested in whether this young man might not be happier than he in his difficult fate. Magino believed that no matter what, he had a home where everyone was happy, and he couldn't understand how he could let it all go like that. The question of how the doppelganger appeared on the roof of the building still lingered in his mind, but he decided to stop thinking about it because it shouldn't be a problem. Parabok was not even sure that they were at least twins or doubles, so he tried his best to calm down. With this thought, he immediately decided that there was nothing more for him to do in this place, although he thinks about it again and cannot stop at all. Unexpectedly, he noticed an old man behind him, fully loaded with large and heavy things. Molodik decided to ask his grandfather in which direction to go to get to Seoul quickly. The new acquaintance ordered him to follow him, never straying from the right direction so as not to lose his way. The old man was interested in where such a handsome guy was going to go. The old man who carried his things could not understand what was in his bag and why it was so heavy. The old man asked if he didn't know that if such a young man helps Murim's management, he will definitely get something in return. Magino disagreed with him, but the grandfather did not listen to him. Unexpectedly, the new acquaintance screamed from the strange troubles that were actively approaching him and the new man. The man ordered him to turn away immediately. The old man did not understand him and immediately asked him what he should hide from, water, fire, or women. The grandfather replied that he was foolish and said that he should beware of an unexpected blow. Unexpectedly, someone kicked the boy hard on the head. The young man accidentally fell to the ground out of surprise, and the blonde simply stood over him with a prepared bat in his hands. Young thugs with smiles on their faces asked if he really thought that the young man could simply escape after beating the main criminal. The heathen wanted very badly to bleed from this foolish and stupid head of a worthless and weak lad. The blonde reminded him that he had learned a couple of easy tricks to try to scare them, but it wasn't scary for them, because they would show him the way to hell. The old man did not understand what they were allowing themselves to do with these hideous scumbags and what they needed from them because they were just going to get to Seoul. The pagan threatened him with brutal murder and ordered him to leave if the grandfather did not want to die now. After his words, he immediately pushed the elderly man away, causing him physical damage, and he fell painfully on his back. The blonde scoffed and told him to be more careful, or else he might break something else. In his opinion, in such a terrible case, he will not be able to go to his terrible job. The boy asked if everything was fine with his grandfather and added that he was grateful to him for the help he had provided. Magino was absolutely sure that he survived only thanks to his heavy bags, but asked to borrow them for a while. It was with these heavy bags that he was going to kill all the scoundrels present who were so actively trying to harm him. They faithfully served him as good protection against the wooden bat of these disgusting and worthless bandits. With handbags, he beat each of those who approached him too confidently in the face. When half of the union was already completely defeated, the blonde still couldn't calm down. Unexpectedly, the young man threw the biggest and most important bag off his back to the blonde heathen. Taking advantage of the scoundrel's embarrassment and confusion, he decided to quickly kick him off the leg. After the young criminal fell precipitously, the boy grabbed his white hair without thinking. On the nearest track, it was announced that a train from Sonkin would now arrive at the station. The new moon dragged the blonde with him. No one could understand what he planned to do with him. The pagan was very frightened by what had happened to him recently and begged to let him go right now. Magino sent him directly under the moving train. The scoundrel thought he was crazy and begged to be released immediately because he understood that he could kill him. It didn't mean anything to the young man, but he decided to ask the question purely for the sake of interest. The crippled man agreed to tell everything so that he would not kill him. The guy ordered him to answer as clearly and very honestly as possible if he really still wanted to survive. The guy still emphasized that it doesn't matter to him at all, but he really wants to ask about this event in order to learn something. With an angry expression on his face, He loudly asked the heathen if it was this company that had lured him to the top of the roof. The blonde was hysterical and did not understand at all what the young man was saying and who he meant in this situation. Magino immediately replied that the conversation was not about any leftist, but about the most worthless and cowardly Jin Tae. The scoundrel did not understand at all what the chatter was about, because he did not hear him, but shouted with all his might. He asked the young man to save him. Another bandit noticed them and ordered the young men to get out of here immediately. The subway train was speeding toward the young people and dazzled them with its bright lights. The heathen began to cry profusely and morally say goodbye to his worthless life at this moment. At that moment, the train arrived at the station and abruptly stopped and opened the doors of the carriages, waiting for their passengers. The old man was standing by the train, and the juvenile delinquent was lying to one side, trying to regain consciousness after what had happened to them. The pagan could not understand what had just happened to him, and was still trying to digest all the events. Standing in front of the wagon, Magino didn't understand at all what he should do next, because the double has absolutely nothing to do with him, so he doesn't need to do anything now. After the young man entered the carriage, the doors automatically closed and the train departed for the next station. An enraged father stood over the bed of his tortured and crippled son. The doctor spoke as if he could save his life, but no one knows what will happen when he wakes up. He wanted to be as honest as possible, so he answered as if he could only hope for a miracle. The director immediately denied him. Looking at his poor child, he realized that salvation had already taken place in his life. Unexpectedly, in the middle of a dream, the young man suddenly opened his eyes, as if he was embarrassed by something, so he became very nervous. When he was lying on the bed with the sleeping baby, he remembered that today was finally his day off from school. The old man realized that there was nothing to worry about because he had recently been expelled from school. The boy ordered the younger one to get up because he was too heavy for him, but the kid did not hear him because he continued to sleep soundly. It was already a cheerful morning on the street. The city was flooded with warm and sunny weather. Local residents welcomed a new day. Younger children played in the yard with water guns and laughed at each other. Magino carefully watched the little ones and smiled when they were having fun. Unexpectedly, the lady asked what he was doing yesterday because she was very worried about him. At that moment, the woman offered him to drink healthy orange juice. The guy replied as if nothing serious had happened to him, and she could not worry about him. The nun asked if anything from yesterday was related to school. She reported that the director called her yesterday and told her about the expulsion from the institution. Mom didn't want him to worry, so she promised to go to the place of study with the priest and come up with something. The elderly lady reminded that, after all, before that he had already been forced to take a year off and then come back, so even if he does something wrong, she still believes in him. Molodik thanked her and wanted to continue the conversation, but she asked him not to worry because when he grows up, he will easily leave this place. The old woman was sure that he would be able to find his way. Unexpectedly, the boy grabbed the scoundrel from behind and tried to throw him over his back to protect the little children. Unfortunately, the young gentleman could not calculate his strength, so he fell next to him, harming not only him, but also himself. The heathens were carrying huge canisters of firewood, which they had already begun to pour, and were already hurrying to their destination. The chief ordered his subordinates to completely burn the hospital to nothing in order to take revenge for what was done to his son and him. The nun ordered the boy to take the others to the cathedral and to do it as quickly as possible so that no one would be physically or morally harmed. Magino tried his best to stop these disgusting teleps. He did not expect this at all, so he became as angry as possible and began to get nervous. The mother said that it would be too dangerous for him, but at that moment, the bandit ordered her not to move and firmly grabbed her hands so that she could not run away from him at all. At that moment, someone hit the boy very hard on the back so powerfully that he could not have expected it and was not at all ready for such a thing. The bandit shouted as if he knew that this bad student would be in this very place, because he had never had another home. The subordinate asked what the boss was doing here. The boy was very confused by such figurative and unpleasant words and began to recall in detail everything he had heard and seen during that time in order to think of a plan for the next course of action. At that moment, he remembered how the thief had said with great arrogance that he was the head of some big company. It was as if he actually hid a grudge against the young man. The scoundrel considered him a worthless heathen and, swinging, wanted him to try the stroke of his stick. In the negative course of events, he must burn everything that is here to the last. The nun watched with pain as her beloved boy was brutally beaten without any remorse. The servant standing next to him was surprised that the boss was in a fight today. After the beating, he asked with a smile if he understood how dangerous adults were in this world now and how they could crush him with just a few actions. The thief added to his speech that he had heard that they wanted to demolish this cathedral for a long time, so he decided to help them with joy. Immediately after his words, the thief threw a lighter, which caused a big explosion, and the building instantly burst into a bright fire. The nun was very upset because she could not believe what she was seeing with her eyes. The boy was very upset by such a course of events and the understanding that he could do nothing to help in this situation, which meant complete defeat. Unexpectedly, someone blew the scoundrel right in the face with a fire extinguisher. None of those present expected such a turn of events. Two silhouettes confidently stood with a fire extinguisher and were already going to go in the direction of the place of events. Parabok became very wary because he did not understand and could not foresee the further course of action in this situation. The principal ordered the secretary to stop spraying the fire extinguisher and immediately bring his son's doppelganger to him. The man looked at him and remembered that he had said confidently recently that they would meet again. Magino could not at all understand whether this madman was on the side of these loathsome bandits. He wondered if he had actually decided to deal with him in this way. The gentleman was sorry to hear such a thing in his direction because he did not think that the young man thought that he could do something like that. He wanted his son not to compare him with these pagans. The boss cleared his throat loudly and, standing next to his subordinates, did not understand at all who it could be and how they could afford such a thing in relation to his powerful and invincible organization. The man carefully looked at his watch and asked where the important people he recently called were. The secretary replied that they would arrive very soon. The police immediately arrived at the scene. The bandits were very confused by such an unexpected turn. Magino hoped very much that the civil service actually wanted to help them and were not in cahoots with the scoundrels. Two men simultaneously addressed the elderly lady. One of them said that he was from the Western Investigation Department. The policeman also replied that she was arrested on charges of stolen subsidies, forgery of documents, dismissal of childcare workers, and cruelty. The woman stood in shock. The old man didn't understand at all why a madman would do such a thing. The man said that these children would be scattered all over the country without a proper education. He knew that the old nun, whom they call Mother, would not see freedom for a long time, and the place where he lived all this time was being destroyed right before his eyes. In his opinion, all the huge problems that were happening now with his past house were caused by him. The madman questioned whether the son would now actually listen to the instructions of his new father. The policemen were about to put the woman in the car. The old woman said that she had never done anything like that, but the employees only wanted to talk to her about it at the police station. The bandit laughed loudly because he understood that he was very lucky today, and right at this moment he would be able to decide the fate of this terrible orphanage. The detective asked the gentleman what he was doing here in the middle of the day, having nothing to do with the situation. The pagan replied as if he wanted to check the territory because he's going to build houses here soon. If he was already in this place, then the scoundrel wanted to end this matter once and for all, to satisfy his whims and desires. He slapped the boy across the face with all his might, without any thought, saying as if it was a real education in his case. It seemed to him that the boy was a fool who grew up without a father and a real mother, and the nun who raised him did various dirty things, so he burned all hopes to the last. Without thinking for a long time, the young man went in the direction of the false relative because he was definitely up to something. The criminal did not understand where he was going, and because of this he called him a spoiled boy. Magino wondered if the mad lord was really that strong. That politicians, lawyers, judges, the prosecutor's office, the police, and even the highest governing bodies owe their lives to their family. The man sternly and too confidently asked if the young man needed any more proof of his strength, but, in the boy's opinion, this was enough for him. The gentleman immediately, without any reproaches, agreed with him and suggested that the newly made son hurry to go to the building to collect his things. Much to his surprise, the boy didn't listen to him and angrily approached the bandit to hit him with all his might to take revenge for what he had tried to do to his house. It might seem too obvious, but this world was too much like a wild and dangerous jungle. No matter how powerful an animal is, it is still young and weak, so it is in danger from the environment. A herd of other species can easily tear him to shreds, leaving behind him not even a small trace or even a hint of his existence in this world. Magino was actively thinking about how to survive in a city where the harsh laws of the jungle reign, but his thoughts were suddenly interrupted. He remembered asking if someone knew who his father was. In his memoirs, a relative of this fool assured that in any case, the boy would not study at this institution, and he should be urgently transferred to another school so that he would not spoil anyone's life. The young man remembered how he confidently fought with adult creatures, cruelly baring his sharp teeth in order to stay alive. He confidently and clearly defended himself, aggressively repelling the attacks of bad and worthless people. Usually, the scoundrels got what they deserved from him, completely losing this difficult and dangerous battle. The man was lying on the floor without any strength to continue the hard struggle. His servant was already running to his master to quickly help the master to come to his senses. The bald man could not understand what was wrong with the young man. Another told the officer that he had assaulted his boss, so he should arrest the criminal without any conscience. The father was very surprised, because he could not understand at all what his new son was doing with the scoundrels. Magino confidently held something in his fist and asked if he should give it to his mad relative. The guy quickly handed over this thing and asked to show the policeman who should be arrested. During this time, he had to pack his things and leave. After this speech, he immediately called him father. In his opinion, this world wore a mask called civilization, hiding under it the terrible secrets of real life. The servants asked the boss if everything was all right with him, but the worthless thief shouted at them because they didn't catch the young man. Despite this, the young gentleman believed that there is still something in our time that holds the world together. He was sure that the world was ruled by the age of barbarism. A larger and stronger opponent can grab you by the throat and unexpectedly take your life. The man turned to Mister with the news that he had been arrested on charges of assault, intimidation, and attempted arson. The boss could not understand how an officer could do this to him. The pagan continued to shout at him as if he did not know who he was and threatened to deal with him to the very end. At this time, the new father looked very carefully at the patch of his own son, who was now on the verge of life and death. The man, who seemed to have lost his mind, smiled madly, as if he had planned something very bad. It was already dawn outside. The big city was already waiting for the moment when its inhabitants would wake up. The boy was about to leave the hospital. The nun said that it was very unexpected, and the children asked the young man not to go. Magino promised that he would return to them to say goodbye properly. Someone still questioned whether this man was actually the schoolboy's real father. Pan assured that he should not worry about it at all. The secretary promised to handle all legal and administrative processes and asked not to hesitate to contact him on any issues. Molodic tried to calm the children and ordered the oldest boy to protect his brothers and sisters. The children begged him not to do this, to stop and not leave them defenseless in this place. One of them was even proud because he knew the young gentleman. The black car quickly left the highway with the necessary passenger in the expensive cabin. The guy was driving with his angry new relative, trying not to talk to him about anything. It was already dark outside. Finally, the heroes managed to reach a huge house. Magino did not expect such riches in the madman's possessions at all, so he opened his mouth wide in surprise. Unexpectedly, a woman flew towards him who hugged him tightly by the neck and called him Jin Tae. She said that she was told that the little boy went to the camp on the weekend, but did not even call his mother. It seemed to the lady that her son had lost a little weight, so she asked him if he had been studying too much lately. The mother began to touch and pull his cheeks, repeating his new name of her former child. Unexpectedly, the secretary turned to the woman and said that she had drunk too much alcohol. He promised to take the lady to her and her husband's bedroom. The father warned that the wife was always drunk, so there was no need to worry because she would not understand their secret plan. After these words, he ordered the boy to go with him to the second floor. When they got up, the crazy man opened the door saying it was his private room. The room looked very large and luxurious, even if you look at it only at the entrance. The old man could not believe that he could have his own bedroom, and it could be so big and spacious. He opened his mouth again in surprise, so he couldn't say anything in response. Having finally entered the room, he turned his attention to a family portrait that was in a frame and stood on one of the shelves. The photo clearly showed his doppelganger, with his new father and mother standing next to him. The new relative asked him to refer to the new name of his past son Jin-tae from now on. The boy asked why this was to him, because he did not fully understand what was happening. The man was angry, because the whole essence of the matter had not yet reached the false son. He took him by the shoulder and answered him as if no one but them should know about it, because it would only cause trouble. The secretary informed the president that the order for the delivery of scholarships and other things to the kindergarten through the Myeong-sun Charity Foundation had been fulfilled. The gentleman replied that it was a good job. The father turned to the boy and said that he was doing this for his brothers and sisters. After his speech, he asked if Jin-tae understood everything from his short story. The boy had no choice in this situation, so he had only to accept this situation. The man decided to leave him and noted that his new son should definitely rest. Magino wondered if this drunken lady was really his real mother in this family. The president replied that he would provide him with a very good future, and he has no idea what he can get living in such comfortable conditions. But he also warned that he would get all this if he listened and followed his orders. In his opinion, you just have to do as he wants, and everything in the family will be fine. First of all, he wanted the young man to listen and remember what the secretary would tell him about Jin-tae. According to legend, he was hospitalized due to an accident, so he should return to school in a week. The madman asked if they had found the boy's phone. The secretary replied that unfortunately they were unable to do so, but he would try to find the device again. According to the man, it was no longer important, because there was no need for a smartphone, because his son is already here. The next events will take place in a week. The weather was warm and sunny outside, and the school was already waiting for its students to arrive. The students asked each other if they had been to the game cafe yesterday, and if others wanted to sneak out of class to go to karaoke. One of them spoke as if he had lied to the teacher about buying a textbook. A bald man with glasses and a mustache walked past the students until he noticed a person who interested him. He realized that Jin-tae himself had left before him. So without thinking for a long time, he decided to call the boy to him. Parabok quickly reacted to the appeal, but could not understand at all what kind of man was standing right in front of him. The gentleman looked at his stitched name tag and asked if everything was fine with the handsome student. He said that he heard how he got into an accident. At that moment, the young man realized that it was the head of the student department. Unexpectedly, the director approached them. He wanted to talk to the man alone, so he asked if the man could leave them. Pan sharply grabbed his cheeks and squeezed them with all his might. Magino did not expect such a course of events. According to the director, it seemed that the operation went well, and he was very glad that everything went well. But he asked if he understood that this was a small incident, since only he and the head knew about it. The man questioned why the young man had done this, although his father had ordered him not to get involved, although such events could have bad consequences. He informed him that he had warned the class and told the boy to leave, as they were to speak to him later. The boy agreed with his words without hesitation. After the director's words, the boy quickly found his office and was about to enter it. The teacher was surprised that Jin-tae had actually been discharged. The man asked the students to take care of him because he must have fallen behind in his studies due to an accident. The blonde could not understand what was being said and exchanged an angry and aggressive look with the young man. The boy's presence actually made him nervous because of the recent negative events for him. He did not understand at all how he was able to get into a traffic accident after his release. The scoundrel remembered how you nerds smeared him, so because of him he lost friends, and this negative gossip spread throughout the school. He wondered what really happened to the stinker and if everyone was sure he was fine. The students were sitting at their desks because the first lesson had already started. The teacher ordered everyone to greet him and prepare for class. Magino asked his neighbor at the desk, a guy with glasses, whether English will be taught now. The stranger got angry and ordered him not to talk to him because he considered him worthless and weak. Molodik was very surprised by such a reaction and could not even understand what to answer in such a case. He quickly remembered how his father had asked him not to cause trouble and to be as calm as his real son. It was necessary to remain in the shadows without drawing attention to what was being done around. The young man understood that he just needed to get used to it and everything was absolutely normal, so there was no need to rush. Unexpectedly, someone knocked the textbook out of the boy's hands and attacked the boy. He only had to bend over the book to pick it up. The scoundrel aggressively kicked him off the desk, trying to physically harm him. The boy and the stranger fell to the floor without even having time to say a word. The blonde was glad that his friend was already here, and as expected, he would not leave the stinker alone. He spoke angrily, as if they had not seen each other for a long time, and called him a weak coward. Magino tried to quickly understand what was happening at this moment and how he should proceed. Gu Chel was also present, so he mockingly congratulated Jin Tae on his return to the school. According to the bandit, they should finish some bad business, which was connected with his insolent behavior. The boy again recalled how his new father ordered him not to create problems and to be quieter than the water and below the grass. At this time, the young man remembered these words and smiled slyly, as if created a new plan. The pagan was surprised that he was laughing and called him crazy, because even he was speechless in this situation. They decided without thinking to start what they had previously planned. Parabok replied that they should stop all this and recognized their victory, so he asked if everything would be fine in this version. The juvenile delinquent grabbed his head, but the boy ordered him to go to his classroom. After these words, the scoundrel went mad, so without reason, he hit him with all his might against the desk. Guchol spoke as if the stench would obediently follow them on its two limbs. Pressing his face even harder against the desk, he asked if the stinker wanted them to drag him around like a dog. A bunch of pagans once again asked the young man whether he would follow them himself or whether he would do it by force. They pressed his hand even harder against the table and already had another version of events. The juvenile thieves asked if he wanted them to drag him as a personal dog. Unexpectedly, the director appeared in the office and asked what these heathens had done here. Guchol ordered the boy to come to the garbage dump and schools after school. If the boy does not listen to them, he will die. The neighbor at the desk was leaning on a chair, trying to recover from what had just happened. Today was an independent training class, so the teacher rested quietly at his workplace. The students were doing their own thing. Some wanted to skip the next lesson or go to an internet cafe. Some thought they had put on bad makeup today, and others were looking at some funny posts on social networks. Magino could not understand at all what kind of strange and not very beautiful educational building this was. He hoped that he would be able to study, but now he did not even understand how to graduate from an educational institution. Molodik remembered how his father explained to him every action step by step because the boy had to be like Jin Tae and not stand out among others. This meant that the young gentleman should not get involved in something that could reveal him, so it was worth running away from problems. When they were in the hospital, the crazy man asked if the young man wanted a new moon, that they may live the rest of their lives happily. Magino did not know at all whether this was a crisis or a new opportunity to start something new at this moment. Unexpectedly, someone touched the young person with a finger, trying to actively call him. The neighbor at the desk asked what he was doing, because the young man had the feeling that his classmate was simply hanging around. He immediately reminded him that he should come to the garbage dump right after school. The blonde thought today was the last time the smelly was being rude to them. After class, they had to crush him because Gu Chel was different from the others. The following events will also take place in the educational institution, but already on the territory of the yard. Young people dragged large, heavy, and almost impossible to lift garbage cans to the landfill. The classmate laughed because he thought that he was taking turns with such a worthless person as him. In his opinion, it was not cleaned well last week, and it will not be easy for him now. The old man asked why he wanted him to be weak and worthless, but the neighbor at the desk pretended not to understand his words. Jin Tae studied well and looked normal. He always walked hunched over, and he couldn't even look people in the eye without hiccups, so he was a loser. A classmate could not understand what happened to his brain after this accident. Did he not remember anything? After those words, the boy began to look at him carefully, trying to understand if it was really him. The guy looked straight ahead, not taking a second. The stranger asked why he did not pay attention to him because he was talking to him. Magino asked a classmate to throw out the trash on his own and tried to quickly run away from the place. Unfortunately, the stranger quickly detained him and immediately asked where he had gone. He couldn't figure out if the bandit's friends had already gathered at the garbage dump or what was going on. In fact, the young thieves were not there yet, but a beautiful female silhouette could be seen from afar. The stranger could not believe that his classmate was running away from the girl and could not understand what was happening at all. The neighbor at the desk once again asked if the young man was familiar with this beautiful young lady. Han Yi smiled widely because she finally found her friend, whom she had been looking for so long. The boy did not understand at all how the young girl could end up in this school, because she studied at another educational institution. He remembered how his father had said that no one should know about this but them, so he tried to think of something to avoid revealing the secret. A classmate asked the girl who Majino was, because only Jin Tae was standing in front of him, so he asked the lady if she knew the boy. The girl tried to understand what was happening here. Han Eji, with full concentration, questioned them again, as if mistakenly mistaking him for her friend. Magino was very upset by this turn of events. He immediately remembered that he should always walk hunched over and not look people in the eye without stuttering. The old man tried to pretend to be his double and uncertainly asked an acquaintance who it was. After that, he barely uttered that his name was Jin Tae and tried to completely replicate the doppelganger's behavior. The neighbor at the desk was nervous because the bell rang and the next lesson should be mathematics. He quickly pulled the young man behind him, because if they are late, they will be killed. The girl stood thinking about what had happened during this extremely strange meeting. She was holding tightly in her hands the almost completely broken cell phone of the crippled doppelganger. The following events will also take place on the territory of the school, but already in the greenhouse, which is located on the territory of the educational institution. The thief sternly asked the pagans what had happened recently in Class 2D. The scoundrel begged for forgiveness and spoke as if he would solve everything today after school. The man asked how long Gu Chol was going to continue all this and if he knew what it might lead to. In his mind, wealth didn't matter, and it would again if he wasn't careful about what he did. The bad boy lit a cigarette for him and promised that he would take care of everything, so he asked the master to rely on him. The following events will take place in the men's toilet of the educational institution immediately after the end of the lessons. Unexpectedly, someone hit his timid and weak desk neighbor in the face. His glasses immediately flew off. The scoundrels asked where his classmate was now. The young bandit asked where this stinking heathen went. The boy flew to the battery due to the blow. He asked again if the worthless stranger knew where his neighbor had really gone. The young man immediately burst into tears and replied that he really did not know where the young man had gone. He said that he was going to the hospital on the 5th break, but he did not take his bag with him. It was the result of an accident, so he thought it was all because of her. The first thief assumed that the boy had escaped, so he asked the other what they planned to do in such a case. The second replied as if they would stop there for now. Unexpectedly, a white-haired, humiliated scoundrel quickly burst into the men's toilet. The young thief reported that he saw the same girl who was with the boy last time on the school grounds. They asked if he knew the young woman who was with Jin Tae. He didn't think she was from their school, but he assumed she might have transferred. Gu Chol was very angry and asked his friends where the young lady could be now. It was already getting dark outside. The evening crept into the big city imperceptibly at all. The young lady was running away from bandits. Criminals ordered not to do this for their own good. Han Yi was clearly sure that she had definitely seen these hideous monsters last time. One of them told the other not to relax and to run after her, but the other one did not have time because she was very fast. The young girl was about to run around the corner, but Gu Chol unexpectedly appeared in front of her. The young bandit smiled and said that the girl had fallen into a trap he had created. He asked her where she was running to, but did not have time to get an answer because the young person sharply hit him in the face with a briefcase. The thief got angry because it was very painful. His friends tried to help the pagan, but were confused. He immediately shouted at them because they can't catch the girl and are doing absolute idle work. Unexpectedly, Han Eji became very nervous because she realized that she had reached a dead end, and there is nowhere to run. At that moment, she saw an open door next to her and ran into the room without thinking. Once inside, the young person realized that he was in an abandoned warehouse. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly and very hard hit the beautiful girl from the back with a huge foot. The young lady quickly fell down the stairs, and the scoundrel shouted loudly that he had finally caught her. One of them offered to call Jin Tae with words as if they had a beautiful hostage. The blonde agreed with him, but it seemed as if the boy's phone had died. Gu Chol was still in a lot of pain, so he decided to see what the girl was carrying in her bag. Opening the backpack, a large number of heavy building bricks flew out of it, falling with a loud crash. The young bandit could not believe what he was seeing and tried to understand what she was going to do with them. The blonde could not understand why the smelly still does not respond to messages and calls. Unexpectedly, a silhouette appeared behind him. Magino immediately kicked him with all his might so that he fell heavily on top of his friend. The young bandits rolled down the stairs together, trying to understand what was happening to them. The old man reported that his mobile phone is not working because it fell and broke. Haneji questioned why he couldn't find this place if there was nowhere else to go. While the pagans came to their senses, the boy apologized to her and said that he really found him with difficulty. Closing the front door, the young man informed them that there was nowhere to run and they were in a dead end. In his opinion, a large number of people checked the landfill, but no one could find out anything. Everything had to remain a complete secret, even if something too terrible happened here. The boy was sure that there would be too many people passing by at the designated meeting place to pay attention to them. Because of this, the young man decided that the old warehouse would be the best place to teach these scoundrels. The young thug laughed and asked if the boy planned all this for their team. The following events took place 8 hours ago. Haneji was very happy because she finally found her friend Magino. The neighbor at the desk, not understanding what was happening, asked who the young lady was talking about because only Jin Jin Tae was standing next to him. The stranger was very nervous because the bell rang and the next lesson was mathematics. He sharply grabbed the boy and dragged him behind him because if they were late for the manatee, they would be killed. The young lady understood that the more she looked at him, the less he looked like a close friend to her and more like his double. Thinking, she decided to come up with some plan to test her theory. The following events took place 5 hours ago. There was a lunch break and all the students ate in the canteen. One of the pagans asked another what was prepared for them today. The second scoundrel replied that he did not know anything about the possible menu. Magino watched them carefully and they pissed him off a lot, but he couldn't make a mistake and betray himself. Unexpectedly, someone pressed the young gentleman tightly by the neck, doing it from behind. The girl wrapped her hands around his head and spoke as if he had finally caught on. The guy spoke like he was Jin Jin Tae again, so he didn't understand why she kept doing it. She immediately apologized and replied as if she had taken him for her acquaintance again. Haneji said that it was as if his mother was asking him to convey something and it was very urgent. Magino opened up quickly at this point because he immediately began to ask what happened to the nun and why she wanted to talk to him so urgently. The young person slyly smiled back at him, giving a hint that she understood everything. Before this meeting, she managed to find out from Mr. the address of the orphanage where Magino lived before. The man was interested in why the young woman was actively looking for this boy. He thought she was a smart student, so he didn't understand why she kept looking for a bully like him. The girl replied, as if she was only interested in being thought out, and asked him not to worry, because if the boy went too far, she would immediately punch him out. The hospital replied to her that they were very sorry, but the lady did not know where her son had moved. The nun assured sadly that it seems they will not be able to help her in terms of the search. Someone reported that new tablets were brought to the shelter. The boys were surprised that someone had sent such expensive things to them. The young woman understood, as if the mentioned charity fund had been familiar to her for a long time. Haneji remembered that this volunteer union ran the Menchang Medical Center. After arriving home, the young person began to carefully search the internet for information about these organizations and institutions. The articles repeatedly reported that the organization also managed a leading pharmaceutical company that developed biotechnology. And the man who made biotech so global was none other than President Jin Sung-go, who was the father of the same Jin Jin-tae. The woman calmly had dinner with her parents. Her mother wanted her daughter to eat even more. Unexpectedly, she decided to turn to them. Haneji decided to inform her parents that she wanted to transfer to another school. Family members almost choked on such a statement. They were interested in why she wanted to do it and where to enroll. The daughter said that she was choosing Samcheon High School, which was located in Gyeongdo. They objected because it was far away. With this course of events, the girl decided to offer them an urgent relocation. Surprised, the boy asked if she really did it for him. The young lady replied that she had a lot of questions, so she offered to meet later. But first, she gave him her phone. Haneji assumed that it might have been dropped before, but unfortunately, only the screen was broken. The young girl immediately remembered how she saw the sign with the schoolboy's name and the device with it. It was locked, so she couldn't see what was inside. Magino did not understand at all what the password was on the smartphone. The friend replied that the clue is his face. The following event took place 3 hours ago. The doctor was informed that she had received a call from the directors. The woman was surprised and replied that she was already leaving to accept the challenge. The guy was still looking at the screen of the broken phone, thinking about further options. Unexpectedly, the electronic device recognized his face and immediately unlocked it. Among the large number of icons, he noticed a downloaded application called Ginstagram. The old man didn't understand at all why this young man, crippled by life, posted such photos. When he entered the gallery, he became interested in what kind of pictures he usually took that were not for social networks. After seeing the following files, he was very surprised by such unexpected footage. On them, Jin Tae's entire body was brutally mutilated and beaten to the point of huge bruises. Magino looked closely and noticed that there were marks and wounds on his skin all over. There were many such photos, and the dates were also completely different, which meant that this was far from the only case. Suddenly he saw the video and decided to download it to view the entire content of the message. In the file, the schoolboy was sitting in only his underwear on his knees, bowing before the pagans. They demanded that he bring money and stop whining, calling him worthless. The scoundrel again ordered him to stop, but with all his might, he kicked him on the lower jaw and chin. The chief said that he should not be hit in the face because it would be too noticeable. After hanging up, he did not understand at all what he was planning to do with him in this situation. Finally, he managed to fully find out what bad things the young thugs had done to this boy. The criminal assured that Jin Tae had indeed been bringing him money for some time, but if he did not do so, they threatened to distribute his video. Unexpectedly, the phone turned off, but he realized that it was not only the screen that was the problem. Sitting down on the couch, Magino began to actively think about what he had just seen. In his opinion, these nobodies only knew how to bully weak people. It didn't matter at all to him, but he thought it would be better if they let the police and the schoolboy's parents know about the situation. Hani Jin quickly opened the curtain and asked if something happened to Jin Tae. She came to the conclusion that something was clearly the case. Her guesses are correct, and she imagines herself in the crippled man's place. She assumed that he was in the 11th grade and she was in the 10th grade, so she must be smarter. Despite this, she still didn't understand what happened because she only heard the sounds from the video and didn't understand if they were related to it. Parabok remembered that his father told him that from now on his future was planned and he would have to focus on what he could not do before. New Moon could do what he said and when he ordered. The girl suggested that he go to his uncle after school because he knows how to copy data or something. She asked if he was going to recover the data from the phone. The boy thought that it was impossible to do this because remembering all the events and looking at the boy, he remembered that the device was already completely broken. Haniji replied that nothing is impossible now and they can do anything. Magino didn't see any sense in it anyway. He thought it was not his problem. The girl asked why he was so angry, but the boy replied that he did not do such a thing. He emphasized that there are many bandits and hooligans in the world and they will constantly try to destroy it. The old man suggested that she visit her uncle a little later and now help him do something. The following events will occur in real time. The schoolboy offered to rake up this mess without the attention of extra eyes. The hooligans did not understand what he was saying and even assumed that he wanted to die. Melodic offered them to admit that it was his mistake, and first of all, he should have beaten them. He also remembered how he could simply and honestly throw the cheeky blonde under the train. The blonde was very scared and visibly nervous after his words, and the giant did not understand why he was saying such nonsense. Magino replied as if they were very lucky that if he was here, they wouldn't have much fun. With these words, he sharply, but without any thought, hit the robber with his knee right in the nose. The pagan began to bleed, calling the young man bad and insulting with uncultured words. He was in a lot of pain because he got very angry and immediately decided to repel the attack. Unfortunately for him, the boy managed to repel the attack. The schoolboy asked if he did not like the feeling of pain. The juvenile delinquent tried to fight back and questioned what this stinker had said to him. He asked him not to get confused because such a thing had never happened and could not even exist. Molodik gave the girl a backpack and thought that all the actions of the coward Jin Tae were a mistake. The young gentleman did not at all try to take revenge for what they did to his double. Remembering all the events, he continued to actively beat this hideous bastard without pity. In his opinion, he was simply paying them back with the same coin for abusing the weak. Immediately after these words, the young man once again kicked him in the face with all his might. The heathen, no longer having any strength to fight, fell on his back on the floor with a loud crash. By his actions, Magino just wanted to show which of them is really stronger and crueler. He replied, as if he did it to explain that there are much cooler people compared to them. The bandits lay almost unconscious, exhausted from terrible pains. Guchol noticed that there were actually all kinds of scoundrels gathered here. Unexpectedly, a metal stick flew towards the blonde. He was surprised and frightened by this. His friend asked him what he was waiting for and ordered him to use it to repel the schoolboy's attack. Zabiaka had little choice between being beaten by this guy or trying to defend himself, as he had already been hit twice. He swung sharply at the young man. Magino did not understand if he was planning to kill him now. After analyzing the situation, the young man punched the minor criminal on the chin. The young gentleman was very angry because of his actions, and the blonde finally realized that he himself got what he deserved. Without thinking long, the student decided to grab the stick in his hand, thinking over the plan of the next events. The scoundrel was frightened and grabbed his neck because of the severe pain that prevented him from living peacefully. Holding his head in his hands, he finally realized that such sensations were extremely unpleasant. The pagan didn't understand. Does it really hurt so much when you're beaten so hard almost to death? Thinking about it, he remembered how he had done the same to others in the past. The young bandit lay with his face pressed to the floor and tried to understand. What just happened to him? Unexpectedly, someone suddenly knocked the stick out of the boy's hands, kicking him hard. Guchol decided to intervene in the fight to continue it and try to win the situation. Zabiaka informed him that he had already stopped bleeding from the nose and called the student a bad word. In his opinion, the young man was very hardy and strong, so he asked him if he planned to kill everyone present. The young master tried to quickly analyze what was happening in this place. Unexpectedly, Magino folded his hand into a fist and immediately placed it directly on his sternum. The young man was clearly thinking about his next step to get out of such a difficult situation. The heathen tried to attack him, but it was all in vain. The scoundrel shouted at him as if he could not escape anywhere. Suddenly, Magino was thinking very hard about something, so he suddenly had to distract himself from the fight. Fortunately, he managed to avoid the attack, but the young thief continued to say the same phrases to the woman. Melodic, without thinking, took a defensive position and called the pagan with obscene words. He managed to avoid the attack again, and the thief hit a large number of wooden boxes with his foot because of him. The girl carefully followed the fight and did not understand whether kicking was a feature of the bad Guchol. He supposed he must have learned to fight before if he could kick so well. It looked like the scoundrel was ready to make up for his defeat from Marquis Nuo's broad shoulders and long arms. The old man exhaled because he did not understand why he did not retreat when he already looked so bad. The scoundrel smiled and questioned what he was doing, and if he had used any cultivation techniques such as the Ting Qi energy preserver. The young thief could not understand this technique, so he decided to laugh at it, but the boy sharply kicked him in the jaw. The young woman did not understand whether this was the same kicking technique as that of this not intelligent bandit. Finally, she realized that the fighting technique was identical, but the young lady still didn't know where he could learn it. Guchol was very angry because of this turn of events, so he called the boy uncultured words. The heathen could not understand how he could move his worthless legs in his direction. In the course of the fight, Magino suggested that this teleplum might completely try to copy him. His punches were much stronger, but Marquis Nuo was doing it much better in his opinion. In this case, the pagan decided to turn away from him and wanted to try to run away from the abuse. Suddenly, the young thief stepped on the barrel with his foot and abruptly rolled off it, completely losing his balance. At this moment, the young man, without thinking for a long time, decided to put his foot in order to prevent the disgusting heathen from landing normally. Guchol fell down and was in a state of complete shock, trying to understand what had just happened to him. Taking advantage of this moment, the schoolboy decided to kick him right in the eyes. Zabiaka could not say anything because of the severe pain, but he tried to recover quickly. Unfortunately for him, the boy wasn't going to back down, so he made another attack. The young bandit's face expressed complete exhaustion and fatigue from what had just been done to him. Magino decided not to stop and try to physically harm the thief again. Guchol couldn't fathom how he could lose to a scumbag who was so much weaker than him before. At this moment, he remembered kicking Jin Tae in the same way and laughed at how quickly Jin Tae was swinging his legs. The scoundrel mocked him and urged everyone to look at the expression on the face of the crippled schoolboy. Those present laughed at him and urged him to do it even faster and harder. Finally, the young criminal was able to understand that he had lost this fight to the young man, whom he considered worthless. Every time Molodic exerted more and more strength to attack him. At that moment, the pagan realized how painful and unpleasant it is to feel in such a position. The old man ordered him not to pretend, but assured him that this was not the end of his abuse. In order to finish off the monster with all his might, he kicked him on the lower jaw and chin with all his might. The young thief begged him to stop and not touch him again, but he did not want to listen to him at all. At this moment, he immediately remembered how Jin Jin Tae had been in the same situation before, and only asked for salvation. At that moment, the scoundrels laughed at him and still wanted to find out how many blows he could withstand, because he simply cannot survive such abuse so quickly. A memory immediately flashed in my head as Gu Chol had already thrown his leg to attack the new moon. Magino looked at them with a very angry and judgmental look because of all the things they had done in their lives. The minor bandit was almost unconscious, but he continued to attack him without stopping. The guide decided that it was time to stop and decided to look at everything that was happening around. Han Yi was watching them and eating popcorn, as if we were in a cinema. In her opinion, this situation was very boring. The old man handed her a new phone that his new family gave him instead of the old gadget. The girl promised him to find out what he wanted her to do with the mobile device. The pagans begged someone for help and considered this action of Jin Jin Tae absolutely wrong. They were on their knees, bowing their heads before him and crying from uncontrollable pain. The young lady was filming them and thinking that they were laughing so hard when they were filming everything. But after this, they wouldn't even dare to share the video. The boy threatened Gu Chol not to see him at school, even if he saw him from the side. Magino threatened in such a bad case, without thinking, to pierce his head apples. Grabbing his face, the young master asked the scoundrel if he understood everything from his speech. Unable to hold back his tears, the young thug had no choice but to agree with him. The following events will take place in the greenhouse, which was located on the territory of the educational institution. Someone calmly watered the flowers and assured that the accounts had been settled during that time. The man recalled how Gu Chol had assured that he would restore the missing parts today. The chief asked the giant whether he should worry about such unimportant things. The bad guy apologized and promised to solve all the issues related to the lost one urgently. Without further ado, he began dialing the mobile phone number of this disgusting schoolboy. Unexpectedly, the young criminal's electronic device lit up and began beeping. The young man immediately paid attention to this and quickly decided to do something about it. The phone continued to ring without stopping, as if someone was waiting very hard for an answer. Without thinking long, the young man stepped on the electronic device, thereby crushing it. The man couldn't understand what was happening because the number was temporarily unavailable and the system required to leave a message. One of them answered as if he had seen him run into the alley behind the school. The bad master questioned whether it was really so he ordered them to find the young bandit and bring him to him immediately. They had to search every place where he could be. It was already dark outside. The city finally lit up with bright lights that could be seen in the distance from huge buildings. The phone flew in an unknown direction, almost completely breaking into two parts. Eventually, it landed completely in the water, so the boy remarked that it looked beautiful. The girl reported that the videos they recorded would disappear with this electrical device and asked if this was the birth of a new Jin Jin Tae. The young lady still couldn't understand how they could make such a strange request and how they were going to clean everything up. Han Yi asked the young man if they were actually his biological relatives and was very surprised to learn that the young man did not know the answer to this question. Magino believed that the most important thing in this is that the man needs his help, and this will also benefit the orphanage. The young woman asked whether he would really continue to keep the identity of his doppelganger. The new moon replied that it will happen, unless a miracle happens, because it will be difficult for the lost son to open his eyes. In his opinion, the life he lived all the time in the orphanage was not so bad. Despite this, he was always at the center of rumors because of people who did not even know him personally. Climbing off the fence, he decided that he had enough of the past, as he had already dealt with the people who bullied Jin Jin Tae. Parabok also wanted to try to live in this strange from a new and completely clean sheet. He didn't even know how long all this could last, but he hoped for the best version of events. At this time, a bunch of young bandits gathered outside. One of the miscreants reported that he had looked through all the alleys near the school, but still couldn't find him. The heathen asked if he was already in town, but the other answered that the scoundrel didn't even pick up the phone. The young man became angry because he did not understand where Gu Chol could be now. The following events will take place in the same school, but a few days after the unpleasant situations. It was an ordinary school day. The students, as usual, went about their business, not paying attention to each other. Some of the students noticed that today there is no blonde toad in class again. It has been like this for several days. Divak reported that other robbers from the neighboring class also did not show up for classes. He assumed that someone else had taught them a lesson, so they sent the bastard to the hospital for treatment. The neighbor did not understand at all what he was learning when he talked to him and waited for his answer. Molodik was very surprised when he saw the mathematics textbook for the past year. The boy replied that it was too noisy here and asked him to stay after classes. A classmate scolded him because he forgot everything he learned after that damn accident. He did not understand how much more this formula could be explained to him. In his opinion, if he was not good at mathematics, he should just learn and memorize. The new moon was very angry with him, so he called him bad words. From what he's seen, the young man can't even understand whether it's math or English if there are letters in the condition. The girl remarked that the boys would definitely have to start with the multiplication table. A classmate asked with surprise if she was the same person from the garbage alley, but did not understand that the young girl had forgotten because she was a first grader. Haniji asked Jin Tae if anyone had been bothering him lately because those heathens hadn't come to the school for a long time. She also said that in a few days, while she was getting used to the new atmosphere, she was able to conduct some investigation. From what she heard, the young lady learned that there was an Iraqi pyramid of delinquents for third-year students. They were divided into ranks based on fighting skills or the amount of money they brought to their elders. The young lady remarked that they seemed to unite with people of the same level, forming personal clans. The young gentleman laughed at her words because he considered all this to be toys and childish behavior. He did not understand how they valued themselves as diamonds, gold, silver, or bronze. Haniji noted that after Magino said that he was trying to live a new life, even his communication style changed. She did not understand at all whether it was good or bad. The stranger thought that his classmate had lost his mind because others could easily eavesdrop on them. The girl answered him as if not intelligent people could not come up with something so complicated, and added that she had heard somewhere that they use certain letters for rating. The boy replied that this information was enough for him, but he did not want to know more. If they bother him again, he will teach them a lesson. His secretary called him unexpectedly, which was already near the school. That's why it was necessary to go. The heathen put out the residue from his cigarette with his sneakers and considered everything that happened to him during this short period of time to be a curse. He recalled that because of Gu Chol's disappearance, they had been severely punished by their elders. The heathen told him to simply use this opportunity to do something. Unexpectedly, the company of scoundrels paid attention to the passing of a schoolboy walking in front of them. They thought they could make something out of his words because, now that they had gone somewhere, he looked better. One of the criminals was interested. Did he look so good because his friend didn't come to school? So he asked again. Didn't they actually choose him first? The young thugs immediately began calling him loudly to attract attention. Molodik pretended not to hear their speech at all. The pagan got angry at such a reaction in his direction, so he called the schoolboy bad words. He still did not stop and ordered the worthless to come to him, but he simply remained silent in response. In the end, the schoolboy unexpectedly spoke up and asked what his rating was. Smiling, he answered, as if he could not tell everything, but asked if he was bronze or still silver. The crowd of heathens just opened their mouths from such a surprise. They did not expect such a turn of events. The long-haired bastard turned to his friend, who was holding a lollipop in his mouth. He did not understand how he had learned about his bronze status. The thief's former friend only remarked on the thief's incompetence in games and suggested that he continue to fight. The boy told him to shut up. The villain did a 180-degree turn and begged to return to the conversation with Chen Jin Tae. The phrase was started about the diamond rating. The anti-hero was no longer there. He stopped listening to the meaningless conversation of the boys and got into the car. A herd of criminals noticed the absence of a young man. The chief of them ordered to run after him and grab him as quickly as possible. It was already too late because the car drove away from the gang. The wretch only threw insults in the direction of his opponent. The driver of the vehicle asked the young man if his friends were accompanying him. He noticed that the boy was gradually getting used to school. The backseat passenger agreed with his carrier. He also noticed that there were a handful of people looking for Ji-tai. The action unfolds in a modern and expensive house. A mother calls out excitedly to her son, who has just returned. A woman, standing with a blush on her face and a glass of wine, joyfully asked the boy if he had just returned from school. The hero threw his backpack on the ground. He didn't even have a chance to have a good conversation with the woman he was forced to call his mother. The young man fell on the bed, spreading his arms and legs. His back suddenly relaxed after a hard day, and his active face exhaled. Thoughts ran past the main character. He noticed that by touching and looking at him, his mother seemed to be normal. The guy in uniform just rolled over to the other side, holding the broken phone in his hands. He had no idea what his relative's behavior was like. The hero only asked himself if he would like to know more about Chen Jin-tae, and could he understand himself better after that. A sudden convulsion in the sternum interrupted all thoughts about the essence of people. It was only noticed that the pains were repeated again. The door suddenly opened with a characteristic roar. One of the relatives could only enter the room without knocking. The bespectacled man smiled at his confidant as he thought he was going to bed right after school. The elder did not understand how one could be so lazy at such an age. During the speech, the hacked device was hidden in his pocket. The stern director said that starting today, the young lady must live a completely different life and learn to live with the persona of Chen Jin-tae. The boy assured the adult that he was used to school and asked him what he should do besides study. The man advised the young man to ask other people. He asked a subordinate to have a servant invite someone into the room. 5 people in business suits appeared in the men's field of vision. They were adults of different sexes who confidently strode towards me. The young boy was puzzled and even opened his mouth. He did not expect such an influx of strangers in his direction. The crazy man arranged the 5 in a line. He decided to introduce business people to his subordinate. Suspicious people turned out to be first-class teachers who would later teach the young man. According to the adult, it is these teachers who should bring the young man to a Korean university, where he will study medicine. The young man was very confused by his new purpose in life. Such directions confused him. Nahaba forced the student to keep the first place in his high school and assured that he would get him into the university no matter what. The look of the young man only became harsher because the words about learning did not only apply to the nuns who were engaged in his upbringing or to the children in the shelter. The scoundrel pressed himself to the young man's ear and whispered that such actions would only further help to avoid the past bad life. The dark evening has already come. The main character was sitting at the table and in front of the computer, glancing at the phone in his hand. Only thoughts about a quiet life and studies did not leave the brunette's head, but there were a lot of doubts, because the desire for a quiet existence was not the same as what he needed. Moonlight fell on the device. The protagonist questioned his alternate personality because Chen Jin-tae's past life was shrouded in mystery. Suddenly, the screen of the working electric one glowed. It looked like someone had finally responded to a past message. The defendant was Han Yoji. She agreed to the meeting and should soon go out to the young man. The city was already covered in the darkness of the night. Street lights flickered on and lights came on in the windows, although the cars continued to move. Familiar juvenile thugs once again molested younger school children. They demanded that the children pay on time for the game items that were purchased from them. The lollipop scoundrel asked the kids if they had to wait until the crowd went crazy to find them. Pupils of younger classes continued to be beaten. They did not understand how 100,000 won could turn into 400,000 won in just 1 week. Marauder emphasized that he was warning about fines that will be imposed for overdue payments. After that, one of the debtors was hit in the face. Katzes shouted throughout the street. He didn't understand people who borrowed game items. The only way to pay it was another way. Scammers stole all the things that the minor debtors had. They remembered that there was still some of the stolen goods left to sell on the black market. The chief said that they win on the amount of money because of Po Chol's disappearance. The long-haired one confirmed that there was very little left for the clan. The second scum pointed out that this guy Gyu Chul is a worthless weakling and a loser. It was necessary to continue working from tomorrow. A gang of scoundrels noticed a familiar boy in a red sweater. The protagonist was holding the phone in his hand because he was going to a meeting. Lollipop Abomination turned to his friend as he thought he had used summoning magic due to the appearance of an old acquaintance. The leader of the gang told a proverb about a ray and a sun. He also recalled how they allowed the young man to escape from the school. The main character did not pay attention to a bunch of scum, and they did not think that luck would be on their side because of such a surprise. In the messages, the guy wrote to his friend that he should take the phone to her, because only her uncle could fix it. In the crowd of his thoughts, the young man didn't notice that the device had disappeared from his hands. It was obvious that someone from the passers-by had grabbed him. Familiar swindlers appeared in the field of vision of the young man. They took away the gadget because the young man avoided meeting with scum. The long-haired scum noticed that the thing they stole was broken. The guy with the sweet tooth in his mouth didn't understand the purpose of the electronic device. The hero realized that mishaps would add extra trouble in the presence of extra eyes. The face of the rich man was unsatisfactory for the chief of bandits. Molodic gritted his teeth and turned away because it was necessary to deal with the boys quickly and quietly because he was in a hurry to meet. The rich young man handed over a bunch of money in exchange for a phone because he really needed it. The thief was pleasantly surprised. He didn't need that junk anyway. When the hands were already extended towards each other, the already broken gadget fell to the floor from the crook's palm. The working face leaned towards the body of the finished thing. The heathen only laughed merrily and said that the smartphone accidentally slipped out. The scoundrel caught the stolen means of communication with his foot because he saw that his opponent was stretching his fingers to the floor. The detective advised the boy not to walk around with a broken electrical device and to buy himself another, new one, and suggested that the boy had interesting videos inside. The bandit kicked the guy on the head, keeping his hands in his pockets. He asked if the rich opponent was not pretending to be deaf in front of him. The swindler threatened that he must break his new find even more and pressed his foot to the floor. So that the spoken words did not come true, the main character grabbed the thief's limb with one hand and pressed it under the knee with the other. The patience of the rich young man was extremely broken. Anger clouded his eyes, and the promise to deal with the scoundrels quietly and without extra eyes was broken. The main scum opened his mouth in pain so much that his favorite candy fell out of his mouth and rolled onto the floor. The pain was inflicted on the head of an incredible scale because the bastard thought that he was not heard. With a scratch on his face, the protagonist recalled that he was playing the role of Chen Jin-tae, who couldn't pick a fight in the middle of the street. History repeats itself with a broken phone, because the brat decided to finish off the already broken information carrier with sneakers. The frightened boy asked not to break the precious thing because it could tell more about the new alternative life. The young man threw himself at the looter's feet. Falling, the actor hit his sternum and screamed in pain. He slipped and grabbed the heathen's trouser leg. The crowd of people who liked to play began to laugh loudly because of the actions of the protagonist. They considered him a comedian and a silly boy. Suddenly, the main character closed his eyes and mechanically grabbed the hapuga's leg with his shaved right hand and with his left elbow pushed his knee into a crunch. Due to such pain, the villain grabbed a lollipop on a stick from his mouth and his eyes became bloodshot. The damage done was irreparable. The crowd stood still and surprised because the list of events with a broken limb happened all too quickly. Friends of the criminal ran up to their crippled friend. One of them wanted to support the leader and the other ran to the enemy. The lithe scoundrel, who wanted revenge for his friend, threw his leg in the direction of the boy in the red master. He threw insults in his direction. The runner's foot was stopped suddenly by the knee of a stranger who blocked the attack on the boy who fell. The stranger was an adult and stocky man in a green sports uniform. He was holding a heavy backpack over his shoulder. A man with short black hair, sharp features and deep wrinkles on his forehead appeared. He concentratedly asked for the name of the protagonist. The brunette's thoughts were intertwined because he didn't understand whether the soldier was in front of him or the teacher interceded. The guy grabbed the phone and wanted to run on because his girlfriend is already waiting for him with her uncle. One of the timbers that had just fallen had no idea who was supposed to stand by it. He was close and covered one eye. Being in the circle of like-minded people, the long-haired bastard still remembered who the elder was. Clinging to the crippled man's shoulder, he forced him away from his problems because the envious man knew Quan Du Q. The beaten man was grabbed by the shoulders because a bunch of swindlers did not want problems on their heads. The guy with the lollipop was throwing threats. An adult in a sports uniform turned towards the gang, asking for a circle of strangers. Having just turned away from the robbers, the athlete wanted to talk to the boy. But he was no longer there. A man with a massive backpack rushed quickly towards an orange taxi that wanted to go on. Scary Uncle ordered the car to stand still, but it was a futile attempt to do anything. Out of desperation, he started cursing. The guy in the taxi, buckled up and detached from his problems, wrote to his girlfriend that he had just gotten into the taxi and would be there soon. Feeling abandoned without an answer, the burly man insulted the young gentleman, wringing his hands. Further actions took place in the workshop, which was located in the garage pavilions. There was an uproar because the device was too broken. 3 people stood in front of a computer monitor that diagnosed the find. The adult said that the smartphone could not have crashed like that. The bespectacled uncle was sure that the phone had been run over by a car and that the repair would be very long. The girl made a cute facial expression in front of her relative because the elder began to scold them for a serious breakdown. The man with the glasses asked if his niece really needed the device. She categorically confirmed. The state of the electrical device was clear, so the man said he would try to recover all the data and said it would be a tough job ahead. All messages, photos and applications and other things that could be recovered will be sent to the cloud. You will be notified via SMS when the service is ready. When the plan was agreed upon, the girl smiled at her relative for the good news, and the rich man bowed in gratitude. The action once again returned to a gang of scum sitting in the dark of night in an abandoned garage, inspecting the state of their wounds. An elastic bandage was put on the leg of the main one of the scum because the injury turned out to be a simple ligament sprain. The abomination stood leaning on the pool cue, his teeth clenched. He cursed Chen Jin-tae as he aimed at his knee. Xiang Jun was asked if he knew that crazy gangster in the tracksuit and why they had to run away. Long-haired assured that he did not shake, but had to run urgently to the hospital with the group. This was considered a lie, because the aforementioned could only be frightened. The ball on the pool table was blocked for a further shot. The guy in the shirt objected to K-Tai. The scoundrel assured that he was not a coward because the boy was not afraid of anything. The friend did not believe him. The older friend smiled. Did his friend really grow up and gain courage? He shyly moved away. The scoundrel really wondered who the athletic stranger was and why he hadn't heard anything about him before. Everyone knew the image of that stocky man. He had this body since high school, and probably all the third-year students knew him. The adult has turned an entire neighborhood into chaos in the past and is rumored to have beaten high school students to death in high school. Fortunately, Mr. left before the end of the second year because his father was a soldier. But at the same time, he was Chen Jin-tae's bodyguard, who never left him. The long-haired scumbag didn't understand why the sports brat had appeared here again. There were thoughts that he was transferred. 2 guys appeared in the room. Their names were Jin Sang-jun and Sang-min Sunbai. Adult high school students were assured that the payment had already been sent today. One of them asked about Gyu Chul. The answer was that the young man was not at home, and his parents did not care about him. This should mean that you can join the clan the next morning. Such insolence greatly puzzled the master of the bastards. One of them was confident in his words and held his own. The promotion of a silly morning did not matter, and this position still had to be earned in front of the boss. Xiang Jun asked his master if he knew about Quan Du-kyu, who had just appeared in the area. Such a boy was unknown to the unworthy gentleman who stood with his back to the group. That was an absolute lie. These words puzzled the long-haired man because the stocky man was known to everyone. The guy with the lollipop was standing behind. The crippled lad reflected that if his friend should know sports, then so should the sir. The following actions took place in the school already in the morning, where students were waiting for the start of new classes. A large stone stood in front of the place of study. Great new knowledge is engraved on it. The new student was introduced to the class. He was transferred here because his father worked here. Some must have known this giant. A group of students at their desks began to whisper among themselves because he looked brand new, like a real gangster. A recently discovered classmate started threatening someone. He put 2 fingers to his eyes, whispering something. The hand was later directed towards the desks. This meant that the boy was seeing someone and watching him. A timid classmate turned to the young man because the stocky boy is looking and pointing at the boy. Due to his tall stature, the stern young man was ordered to sit behind Chen Jin-tae. The aforementioned was not very happy about this. At school, the bell finally rang for the entire corridor. This meant that the lesson was over. Someone grabbed the main character with massive hands, hugging the young gentleman so much that he screamed. The grip of the hug was very strong. The unfamiliar voice behind did not understand why the young man pretended not to know him. Kwon-do-kyu started to cry with happiness at the unexpected meeting with his friend because he had been missing his friend for a long time. A classmate in glasses screamed from such revealed circumstances. No one expected such sincere emotions from the strong man. The protagonist just decided that the gangster had lost his mind and demanded to let him go because his chest hurt. Being in a circle of like-minded people, after all, the stranger asked the young man if he missed him so much that he was ready to die for all this. Unexpectedly raising the boy in his arms, he asked how much water had escaped during this time, while he was not at this school. He loudly introduced himself as an old acquaintance and good friend named Kwon-do-kik. A classmate still held him up and asked if he remembered the wonderful moments they shared during their friendship. The fellow at the desk informed the stranger that Jin Tae seemed to have lost some of his memories due to an accident that happened before his arrival. The strong man was surprised and asked if the young man had bought some strange lollipops. Another explained that his memories were gone because in any case the two of them had not kept in touch for a long time. Finally, it dawned on the giant that something had clearly happened to the young man. He, without any hesitation, promised his friend to help him regain his memories, because he believed that he was one of those who knew him for a very long time. The old man noticed that if we did not take into account his madness and a little rage, then the strong man was not such a bad person anymore. The following events will also take place at the school, but in the men's restroom during one of the breaks. A trio of scoundrels smoked in the restroom during a break, chatting about their bad deeds. One of them asked the other about the condition of his knee at the moment. The pagan replied that it still hurts a little, but now he can walk without cheekbones, and said that he wanted to use this chance in general. The scoundrel said that he wanted to ascend to the D clan as long as their team member Gu Chola was not with them. A friend asked what he thinks about Sangjun. He remembered that he was an active user of weapons and did not understand at all that such good could come from using these items. The scoundrel was surprised and asked if he wanted to fight with him. Zabiaka asked why they should make childish quarrels between their people. In his opinion, he simply had to outdo him and gain recognition from others that he was the best candidate for the position. The lunch break has begun. School children stood in line and asked each other what would be on the menu today. The stranger loudly called him to his place to go to dinner together, but the young man refused him because he wanted to go to the toilet. The strong man asked if his friend meant the director's office and asked him to come back as soon as possible. Parabok tried to understand if he had problems with understanding. The new moon reflected on the fact that there was still no news about Jin Tae's cell phone. Magino assured himself that he didn't need to worry about it so much. Unexpectedly, two unknown boys grabbed the schoolboy's arms from behind and led the girl somewhere in an unknown direction. He wanted to question what they were planning to do with him, but they told him to keep quiet and follow them quietly. The neighbor at the desk was surprised when he saw such a picture. Kwon-do-kik was very nervous because his friend still hadn't returned after being away. Unexpectedly, a classmate ran up to him and warned that his friend had been taken to the toilet. Molodik asked if he had been to the director, but he didn't understand the rest because he was brought near the Social Security office. In fact, it turned out that this men's toilet was the very base of these young bandits. According to him, it all started when he was still a freshman in this school. Molodik immediately remembered how his friend always suffered from bowling and bullying from school bullies. Entering the dressing room, the giant began to loudly call Jin Tae to him because he was very worried about his friend. He was very surprised because after looking around the room, he realized that there was absolutely no one here. At that moment, one of the juvenile bandits unexpectedly appeared behind him, actively watching his actions. The heathen already knew that he had attached himself to the skunk from the very morning, so he thought that the worthless schoolboy had finally fallen into his trap. The scoundrel quickly swung his stick and assumed that the sir knew this worthless fellow for sure. Zabiaka recalled how the bad master was surprised when he heard his name and pretended not to know him, but it was very noticeable that he was actually too panicked. He thought that if he could get this bastard out of his way, he would definitely be able to get a big title. Without thinking for a long time, he sharply and quickly, using full force, hit Keon Dukik on the back. No matter how strong he was, no one could withstand such an attack. Meanwhile, strangers took the young man to the office, where they took a large amount of flour products and ordered him to eat. Magino asked what it was, but they replied as if he didn't need to know about it. The boy quickly ate the buns and did not understand at all whether this was a new form of bullying. Bullying in the form of eating bread. Unexpectedly, his phone lit up as he received a message that the data download was complete. He immediately remembered how the girl's uncle had said that photo files could be installed in a new way, so he promised to upload everything to the cloud so that they could see it. After this happens, he should have sent an SMS. When he realized that all the data had been restored, he immediately answered one of the strangers as if he had already had enough and gave him a loaf of bread. The second asked where the young man had gathered and threatened that if he did not finish his food, he would be severely punished, and they would make him eat them until he died. The boy opened his mouth very wide and completely stuffed a huge loaf of bread into it. The students were surprised by the fact that he swallowed it immediately, without even drinking it, so they could not even answer anything. Opening the phone, he saw a message with the first data containing several photos and text messages. The boy was very surprised because in the first picture he saw beautiful little fluffy cats. Magino was immediately embarrassed and blushed because he thought they were a little cute and very beautiful. Going into SMS messages, he assumed that he could find something in the recovered messages. Unexpectedly, the young man managed to find exactly what he had been trying to find the answer to for so long. It was a small letter that was sent 3 years ago. The following events will again take place in the men's room. Someone nervously asked Jin Tae about what happened to him and how he was feeling now. The schoolboy did not know if this would be the last time he would be able to contact him in this life. He aggressively asked if they knew how often he got into trouble, how much his father wanted him to forget his future and start living a new life. Parabok continued to tell how he started boxing and, despite the fact that his relative half forced him to do it, in the end he became interested in this business himself. In his opinion, he was as skilled and good as possible in this aggressive sport. The scoundrel noticed that the boy was quite cheerful. The student clearly understood that he might be a bit slow and not good at attacking. He really wanted to have a chance to make things right at least once in his life. Keon Dukik would very much like in such a case to beat to death those who would contact his friends and family members. Not distracted from the fight, he continued his speech, inflicting more and more physical damage on the pagans. Molodik reminded that he does not know how to fight at all. Unexpectedly, he hit him sharply with a stick and the heathen cursed him too loudly. The guy, without thinking for a long time, decided to push him away from him. The crippled killer hit his sore knee with all his might, falling rapidly to the floor. The stranger suddenly grabbed his leg and decided to pull him up, because if he continues the fight, he will no longer be able to participate in boxing competitions. The big fellow questioned the scoundrel once more if he knew who he really was, and assumed that if he could hit him, it would mean that his lower limb had already fully recovered. In his opinion, if he just helps him remove the cast, then it will not be considered a full-fledged fight. The juvenile criminal was very frightened by his words and asked again, not understanding what he was planning to do with him in the future. At that moment, the boy hit him with all his might on the cast so that it could completely crumble into small pieces. The scoundrel screamed very loudly because of the hellish pain developing in his sore knee. Melodic reread the message that he does not want to get into fights again, because if he continues to do so, he will not be able to participate in boxing competitions. Keon Dukik decided to leave the village because he believed that he should clean up his bad past. He wanted to find his honesty, so he asked Jin Tae to look closely at what was happening around him. The neighbor at the desk asked if he had been taken to the toilet next to the Social Security office, but the young man replied that nothing of the sort had happened, and he was just eating bread. The friend said that he thought that he had been captured by young bandits, so he reported that the stranger had already gone to rescue him. The young gentleman became very angry and did not even want to listen to him, and immediately went in the direction of the men's toilet. Seeing his faithful friend with a broken head, he was very surprised at what had happened to him. He wanted to say something to him, but he put his hand on his shoulder and prevented him from doing so. The strong man nervously asked if everything was fine with him and if his friend was seriously injured. The schoolboy said he had heard that he had been bullied every day since he left, so he was actually wondering if he was okay. At this moment, Magino finally realized that Jin Jin Tae actually had a very good friend. The giant winced in great pain, and this made the young man worry too much about his feelings. Without any hesitation, the boy suggested that he go to the hospital immediately, but he did not want to go there at all, because he thought that everything was fine with him. The old man replied that it was very noisy here, so he sharply grabbed his hand and ordered to immediately follow him. Keon Dukik was very surprised by the fact that his comrade had such great strength. The following events will take place in some billiard club, in the name of which it was stated that billiards is the luck and strength of all balls. Someone swung a stick hard and, cursing loudly, was already about to deliver the first blow. An unfamiliar person attacked the hideous heathen with all his might, so that he cried out in incredible pain. Another schoolboy tried to excuse him, saying that he had just put on a new cast. But the older one didn't seem to hear him and ordered him to leave if the younger one didn't want to get one too. The criminal ordered him to treat everyone like family and emphasized that he wanted to leave and surpass him. The bad guy cried and apologized because he was as wrong as possible in this situation. The thug asked if the schoolboy really thought he was scared of the weirdo and told him that he was actually one of the few who survived the fight with Keon Dukik. After finishing the beating, the young man added that he wanted to teach the scoundrel how to properly use a weapon. The following events will take place near the local clinic, where the heroes went after what happened to them. The three boys walked calmly after a hard day, cheerfully talking to each other about various topics. The friend said that he did not need a cast because his bones are already strong without extraneous things. The old man assured that he was saying the wrong things because the doctor had ordered him to be more careful. Keon Dukik asked the young man to return the bag to him, but he refused to do so because he was worried about his physical condition. Unexpectedly, his phone rang, and unlocking the screen, the boy saw that his father had decided to call him. The man asked him where he was now. The son replied that he was going home with a friend because he had injured his hand. The madman ordered him not to look for trouble and informed him that they would send a car so that he would come urgently, because his grandfather was waiting for him. Dad asked if he knew about his training as a secretary and reminded him that he shouldn't be late when an old relative is looking for him. In his opinion, all this should happen quickly regardless of his employment. Parabok decided to simply remain silent in response to him, at the same time pondering the next plan of action. He quickly apologized to his friend and explained why he should go, because something had happened at home. The friend answered, as if everything was fine, and promised that the guy in glasses would take him home. The boy said goodbye to them, and the neighbor at the desk could not understand why he got into such a business again. The strong man emphasized that he could carry the backpack himself, but he replied that everything was fine and that it did not cause any problems. Unexpectedly, crossing the pedestrian bridge, they saw a huge company of bandits approaching them. With an irrepressible smile, the head greeted the most invincible and powerful schoolboy, Keon Dukik. The boys were very alarmed because of such a bad course of events, because they understood that nothing good was waiting for them. The members of the bad organization began to whisper among themselves, suggesting that either he simply did not recognize him or they simply had never fought the boss. The new moon finally understood that it would surely be revenge for what happened many years ago. He bowed to him and asked for forgiveness, because before his transfer to another school, he had caused a lot of harm to a large number of people. The pagan was satisfied with this turn of events, but replied that his apology meant nothing at all. Immediately after his words, the criminal, without thinking for a long time, hit him on the head with a stick. In his opinion, it was from this legendary and beautiful moment that he should have apologized. In his memoirs, a young man said that he did as he ordered and reported that the strongman had been registered as a participant in the competition that would soon take place. The stranger also added that last time he was almost punished for a fight, and he heard that he had to write a letter of apology. After his words, the bandit understood why he only broke the cast. Unexpectedly, the whole crowd of bandits pounced on the poor schoolboy, trying to physically harm him. The scoundrel reminded him as if the lad now still won't beat him. Immediately with these words, he continued to hit Keon Dukik's head again and again. Without thinking for a long time, the schoolboy ordered his friend to run away from here immediately, so that at least the friend would remain unharmed. Turning his head, he realized that his classmate was doing exactly as he had ordered. One of the bandits began to quickly run after him, asking why he ran away from their company alone. The main criminal smiled and answered as if he knew in advance that this would happen according to his plan. Because of this, he informed everyone present that he had prepared well and ordered to bring the scooter. The wheeler quickly managed to knock the schoolboy and glasses off them so that he was completely confused. The boy quickly fell, not even having time to recover from what had just happened. Keon-duk-ik tried to shout something loudly to his friend, but the scoundrel on a scooter was already speeding towards him. Coming up from behind, the thug sharply hit him on the back with a sharp object, causing him great physical damage. Trying to recover from bad events, the strong man realized that running away in such a case is not the best option at all. He remembered how he used to chase his enemy to the end of the world, trying to finish him from a moral point of view. The mob of heathens advanced rapidly, and each of them wanted to finish off these two as quickly as possible. Looking at his enemy, the schoolboy decided that, unfortunately, this version of events could only save them. Taking a defensive position, Keon-duk-ik realized that he had no choice in this situation. Unexpectedly, one of them opened the door wide and started calling Keon-duk-ik loudly. The young student turned his back to him and asked in surprise what he wanted from him. The boy reported that Yan-ju was physically harming one of Chun Min-jun's boys. Molodik decided to turn his face to him and get up from the poor man on which he was confidently sitting before that, confidently smoking a cigarette. With a very serious expression on his face, Keon-duk-ik decided to ask where exactly this was happening. It took place right at the time of high school. It was nothing more than creating groups with friends and fighting with others. The scoundrel was aggressively beating him and asked him why he was not deflecting from powerful attacks and was looking down on him as if he was still not going to defend himself. The boy began to laugh at him very hard, which made the young criminal as angry as possible. Unexpectedly, the schoolboy decided to punch this disgusting heathen on the chin. At first, he thought fighting was a way for real men to protect friendship, so he remembered how they used to do it together. He very often killed innocent people, adhering to this completely wrong opinion. The more he did physical harm to people, the more often he got complete satisfaction from it. Keon-duk-ik admitted that he really enjoyed trampling and hurting people who were much weaker than him. The young bandit was crying, sitting between his legs on his knees, because he was very afraid of him. One of the thugs asked the boy if he was going to go with them to teach Chun Min-jun how to do it. The new moon in such cases was ready to harm everyone in this world, except for one person. Unexpectedly, someone grabbed his arm sharply, but not trying to do anything bad. The friend tearfully begged him to stop doing such bad things immediately, because it would only destroy him. The second one very much did not want him to destroy his priceless life because of such bad deeds. After his words, Keon-duk-ik decided that he must immediately correct his worthless lifestyle and future destiny, as he had promised to his faithful friend Jin and his father. The strongman also reminded that he had made the same oath to himself, never to forget it no matter what happened to him. A gang of young criminals ran to attack two schoolchildren, causing them physical harm. The strongman knew for sure that running away against such crazy people was not a solution. Unfortunately, they had only one way: to escape unnoticed, because he had almost no chance of victory. The two scoundrels decided to grab the guy with glasses first because he looked completely worthless and could not defend himself. Keon-duk-ik did not expect this turn of events at all, so he felt very confused. He sharply grabbed the boy's hand to pull him to him, thereby protecting him from the bandits. He came up with the brilliant idea of taking a classmate in front of him so that he would kill them with his body. The young criminal screamed from piercing and incredible and hellish pain that prevented him from living. It was at this moment that the strong man saw his past self in his cruel and aggressive face. The heathen crept up to him from behind and smilingly offered him to finish with everything. The boy understood that because of what he did to him then, this would never have happened in his life. He asked the bandit to let the schoolboy go because he still had a fight with him. The scoundrel smiled and replied that it depends on their joint work. This meant that he was clearly up to something. First, he ordered him to immediately kneel down because the young man was in complete confusion. The thief asked if he wanted to do it. Keon-duk-ik nervously clenched all his teeth, thinking about what he should do next to stay alive. The old man knelt before him because it was only to wash away his sins. The company laughed at him because they considered him worthless and assumed that he only had a large body, and he himself had no idea about himself. The schoolboy asked to let the frightened schoolboy in glasses go, but the young thief refused him. Unexpectedly, he quickly spread his legs and ordered him to crawl between them immediately. Keon-duk-ik was very surprised because he did not expect such a stupid and humiliating turn of events. The heathen asked if it was not as if he had asked people to do this all the time before. He thought it was finally his turn and added that he would only let the boy go if he did so. According to the new man, it doesn't matter at all if his friend gets hurt in this situation. Parubok knew that if he decided to hit him, he might have to go through a lot of annoying procedures. But in the end, he would still be vindicated. He suggested that it would never actually end his life as a boxer. But the boy clearly knew that if he beat these scoundrels, they would bring even stronger people with them, because he had already been like that in the past. Keon Dukik couldn't get into an endless battle of revenge and struggle again. In his opinion, the new moon should finally end this bad cycle that has dominated his life for so long. Kneeling before him, the young man clearly understood that he had to keep his promise. The scoundrel watched him carefully and smiled at his every action, because he considered himself the main one under such circumstances. Unexpectedly, there was a very loud and annoying sound coming from the wheels of the scooter. The young robber asked to stop this device because it was getting too noisy in the room. Zabiaka, who owned it, replied that he didn't do it that way, because now it is completely standing still and not going anywhere. At that moment, someone appeared behind the minor bandit, who decided to put an end to all the bullying. Magino confidently rode the scooter, wearing a helmet in the form of a small pink cat. Molodik begged to look at these telepny and asked what kind of weapon was there. When he got closer, he noticed that the devices were real, and it was necessary to be at least on the same level as them. Keon Dukik was very much surprised by the appearance of his faithful friend, who was hiding so confidently under the helmet. The guy quickly apologized and already started driving his wheels right into the scoundrel's body. Parubk managed to quickly get to a horizontal position in order to inflict great physical damage on the chief. Without thinking for a long time, he rested his front part right in the face of the young criminal. He angrily watched the worthless fool suffer from the growing pain. The heathen quickly fell to the floor and began to moan from the most unpleasant physical sensations. The guy finally left it and decided to approach the others who were present in this room. The Telepnai company did not understand at all who it was and by what miracle it all happened. One of them threatened him with a stick and asked where he came from, but deep down he was deathly afraid of the unknown. The guy got very angry and, gathering all the strength he could, drove over his young body. The family secretary called the young man to come to him so that they could go on business together. The man handed him a cup of hot chocolate because the former heir always liked hot chocolate, and he always drank it before meeting with his grandfather, saying that it calmed him down. Parubka was interested in how the Sir could behave normally and calmly like that when he knows about the whole situation that has developed in the family. Out of the corner of his ear, he heard a team of zombies talking about the weapons they should bring with them, because only by making the boys subordinates would they be able to control Jin Jin Tae. One of them asked if he was famous in high school. The heathen told him not to worry and to do as he said. He really wanted to beat the schoolboy to death. The guy noticed that he had a very bad feeling, although the young man did not even have the phone numbers of his friends. After handing over the cup of cocoa, the young man asked the secretary to wait just 1 minute, because something important had happened. The young gentleman announced that he would be back soon, but he replied that he could not do so they could not be late for this meeting. A subordinate of the family grabbed his hand so that the main heir would not go anywhere before the important family dinner, because this was not something he could easily escape from. Magino asked the receptionist if Jin Jin Tae had ever had a friend since high school. The man thought about his question because he did not remember such a question. He was sure that they had never seen the schoolboy joking and laughing with his friends, so everyone would be wondering if he looked happy then. The boy informed the master that his doppelganger finally had real friends, so he should return only after he quickly completed one task. The gentleman replied that he had to get back before the hot chocolate got cold. The secretary reminded that he must not be late for such an important event. Magino, without any hesitation, ran to meet him, promising the man to call him when he finished. At that moment, he decided to act and steal someone's scooter along with a protective helmet to save his friends. The woman shouted across the street at the schoolboy, and the subordinate of the family was in complete shock from what he had just seen. To save the day and buy time, he decided to kick the car to leave some believable scratches on it. Immediately after that, the gentleman called his president to inform him that he and his son had been in a minor accident. The secretary quickly apologized and promised to deal with the created problem urgently and take another car. After finishing the conversation, the man carefully examined the condition of the car to make sure that the scratch was genuine. The guy, without any thought, with great anger and aggression, quickly ran over the scoundrel with his scooter. A friend ordered him to run away first of all those present at this strange meeting in the pool club. The bespectacled schoolboy quickly grabbed Keon-dukik and tried to pull him along to quickly run away from the scene. The head heathen was still trying to come to his senses, so he ordered the others to catch the boys. Magino decided to distract them, so he answered as if right here he wanted, or they tried to catch him. Molodik quickly drove into a corner, severely beating the young bandit because of his brazen actions. The boy confidently drove along the planned trajectory, but still he could not predict something. Having reached a dead end, the mysterious young man decided to finally put an end to everything. He answered as if he did not understand, because he thinks that he looks like a mouse in a mousetrap now, but he is wrong. The new moon smiled and exclaimed, as if he had actually lured him here to complete his plan. Two school children tried to quickly escape from the company of bad and disgusting Telepnai. The neighbor at the desk was so confused that he didn't even notice the big van behind him. The car was traveling at a high speed, but fortunately the truck did not hit the young man, although he was very scared. The scoundrels answered, as if now everything is fine for the fulfillment of their final plan and the boys have nowhere to run. Keon-dukik decided to take his friend by the hand to protect him from the bad actions of juvenile criminals. Without thinking for a long time, the strong man began to run away, trying not to let his faithful friend fall to the ground. The driver, whose car they ran over, got angry, because he thought that he had lost his mind and wanted to die. The pagans were completely confused and wanted to follow them, but the cars prevented them from doing so. The chief cursed at them and asked what they were doing now instead of acting normally. Magino heard that they were going back to the pool hall, where he was to keep everyone's head down for the night. It had been dark for a long time in the city, and it was completely enveloped in lights that shone from the windows of the apartments in which the local residents rested. The following events will take place in Grandpa's luxurious building. The servant confidently brought a large cart with various expensive drinks and food into the room. The table was completely filled with delicious and unique dishes prepared by the best chefs. The young gentleman remarked that there was a very terrible atmosphere here, so it was impossible to feel comfortable. In his opinion, this was very different from the loving and normal family he imagined. The secretary said that, fortunately, they were not late and added that the president had important business, so he had to go first. The man had already reached his destination and was going to put the new car in the garage. He believed that the young man should rest. The old man asked the man if he lived here. The subordinate of the family replied that he actually lived in this villa and would be staying here today, so he begged very much for the new heir to rest as much as possible. A tired man was taking off his outer clothes, going to rest after a hard day's work. He exhaled heavily, letting go of the events that had happened to him until today. At that moment, he understood why the boy had asked him where he would be staying today. Magino unexpectedly visited him, apologizing because he had a key at home. Melodic thanked him for not telling his father about everything that had happened, but the sir understood that it could not be that he came here only for this. The guy quickly agreed with him and replied that it was the first time he was in his house. Turning on the light, he finally realized that he was not quite an ordinary secretary and had some secrets. Seeing a large number of weapons, the young man asked whether the man also works as a bodyguard. Even if it wasn't, he had a right to keep it a secret, and he couldn't just let it slip past his ears. Looking at a certain helmet, the young man noticed that it looked like something from the movies and asked him not to talk about the fact that he seems to have a weapon. Embarrassed, the secretary asked him to stop joking and asked why he was here and if he needed help with anything. Magino replied as if he did not need anything, because this matter was only for the children so that everything should be decided between them. He added that he noticed something good now. Pointing to a certain object, he asked if he could borrow it, promising not to do anything bad. The following events will again take place in the billiard club, but already when it was completely dark and there was not a single person on the street. The main villain killed everyone else with a stick in the back of the body for what happened today. He was very angry because they couldn't wait until tomorrow because he wanted to do it all today. An unknown man decided to address him with words as if he understood, but it is a little strange. The stranger could not continue his speech because he ordered him to disengage and not get into his own business. After that, he immediately pushed him to the floor. The heathen aggressively questioned whether the sir wanted to take the blows instead of the young nobodies. Suddenly, the lights in the entire room went out. The young bandit asked why they were doing this and ordered them to quickly turn on their flashlights. All the phones that were in the room and belonged to the killers quickly flew up, lighting up all the screens and flashlights. They didn't realize what it was until someone was already standing outside the door, carefully watching every movement. Molodik closed the door with a stick and spoke as if agreeing with what he had just said. The scoundrels gathered together and immediately realized that it was so dark here that you could poke your eyes out. The young man replied that just like them, he also wanted to do everything today to finally end them. The heathen confidently and defiantly assumed that the stranger might be opposite the door, so he decided to just give a hard blow with his stick in that direction. The boy recalled how he asked the secretary to borrow a strange thing, but the man remarked that it was just one of his toys. The gentleman noted that this device was generally used by him in the army and asked whether the young man really needed this thing. The green light that brightly emanated from this device illuminated the faces of each of the young bandits who were present at this meeting. The guy replied that a heathen should be able to clearly define the anatomy of the human body, and he himself where the head is, and immediately after his speech, without any thought, hit him on the leg. The scoundrel called him bad and uncultured words and did not understand at all who he was and why he appeared so suddenly in the billiard club. The grandfather said that he had heard that this time his grandson had some shortcomings in his academic work on the exams. He thought it was normal to make mistakes, but he decided to add something. Regardless, he didn't want Jin Jin Tae to assume the same bad result over and over again because he might take first place in the next exam. The old man asked whether his grandson agreed with his opinion. The father replied that the grandfather could not even worry about it because he would solve everything immediately. Unexpectedly, a new message arrived on the boy's phone that the doppelganger's electronic device was being updated again, and a second folder with saved data was available. The guy confusedly answered that he urgently needed to go to the toilet because he could no longer restrain himself from natural needs. Magino confidently assumed that he would not be able to digest that food at all, which they offered him because he could not be in such a situation at all. Out of the corner of his ear, he heard how an old relative said that he could not believe that this far from ideal person was his only grandson. Dad apologized to him for what happened. Having already looked inside the folder, the young man realized that Jin Jin Tae previously had a personal diary in which there were many secrets hidden in the notes. Unfortunately, only part of the data was recovered. The first recording was made in the initial year of high school. Magino decided to see what was written there, as if no problems were foreseen. The weather was warm and sunny outside, and the new school day was passing quickly. Someone in the class loudly and actively called the schoolboy's name in order to attract his attention. The scoundrel hugged the young man tightly and suggested that he immediately leave the Social Security Department. The guy, without any hesitation, agreed to his proposal because he had friends, bandits who were quite courageous. The rich student generously fed everyone present, and they thanked him for such a good deed. The pagans asked the new man if his family was well off, and even if he had no diamonds, did that mean he was made of gold and silver? Jin Jin Tae confidently objected to their strange and most unreasonable thoughts on the subject. Zabiaka asked if this meal was dinner at all, so he suggested that he invite them to a fake meal tonight. The second young bandit agreed with him and replied that they would still take the girls with them and added that he knew a nice and quiet town, but it was a little too expensive. Embracing the poor man, he agreed with his thoughts because he believed that they had a rich and well-off friend. Unfortunately, the young man objected to them because tonight he had an extra lesson in important academic subjects. In this case, the Zabiaka offered to give him a small amount of money so that they could have fun in the evening. It all started with this, because the schoolboy actually gave them a small amount of money. They believed that if he was really from a well-to-do family, then they could often do so. The guy listened as they discussed this situation and thought that they could borrow a small amount of money from a friend, and if there was a problem, they could easily return it, because it was not the first time, the young bandit answered. As if it could be said at first glance, and he believed that his friend was just as timidly talking to his parents at home. After that, they began to cling to him and coax everything he had out of him, as if testing his limits, but things got worse and worse as time went on. The following events took place already late in the evening in a luxurious estate, the resident of which was a poor boy. The father could not believe that his son only received an award for outstanding achievements in some small competition. He asked if he was laughing at him or trying to start a riot with his terrible actions. The boy, like a ghost, with a sad face, sat on his knees in front of the maddened relative without uttering a single word out of great fear and shock. The man angrily and aggressively asked why he couldn't just focus on his studies. The old man tried to make excuses that it was just school, but his father asked if his brain was also empty, just like his mother's. Jin Jin-tae was very tired and saddened by this turn of events, so he kept running through the words that the crazy relative had said to him in his head. Young gangsters calmly stood and smoked cigarettes, hiding in the school grounds, and talked about their business. Unexpectedly, one of them noticed that the young man was carefully watching someone, so they decided to ask him about it. The scoundrel thought that if they were close, it was okay for them to just call him by his first name. The second suggested that he come up with a nickname. The main bandit thought about what he should call the now weaker boy. With an evil grin, the scoundrel decided to call him a telephone and not at all intelligent Jin. The other young thugs laughed and noticed that he had an incredible talent for creating funny names and surnames. The scoundrel smiled because he was sure that he was exaggerating, because he can easily come up with such nicknames. They looked at the boy, and one of them asked if in fact he did not look like a fool. It was then that his bad life had just begun, but now he decided to end it, once and for all. Unexpectedly, one of the pagans saw the reflection of green lanterns in the darkness and, without any thought, decided to swing at him. The stick flew sharply towards the young man, and it was at this moment that he finally understood that these nobodies had started this war first. Zubiaka could not understand exactly where the stranger had gone and loudly asked everyone to immediately turn on the flashlight. But it was not working as it was. Unexpectedly, the mysterious young man hit the young bandit on the sick, plastered knee. He remembered as if they were the ones who targeted Jin Jin-tae. The angry teenager screamed very loudly from the piercing and incredibly intense pain. The heathen called him a bad man and promised to kill him, while the other stood behind him and answered as if he were here and finally succeeded in catching him. Quickly swinging the stick, the schoolboy suddenly hit his friend on the back with the stick. Another friend thought he was stupid and asked why the bully decided to hit a team member. Unexpectedly, the boys were very embarrassed because they felt that something wrong was happening in the room. The stranger sharply hit one of them on the face, causing him physical damage. The second was awaited by a strong and powerful kick on the jaw, from which he still could not regain consciousness. The young man decided not to stop there, so he hit the young bandit with all the strength he had. One of the people present remarked that he was more used to the darkness, and the other asked where the unknown man was and whether they would at least be able to see him. After seeing green lights in the dark, they finally managed to understand where the stranger was. The scoundrel called him a bad person, so he grabbed the billiard table without thinking. He began to remember playing baseball in high school. After his speech, he immediately aimed the red ball towards the enemy. Unfortunately, he could not get into the boy and realized that the unknown person was not here. A team of pagans tried to understand where he went again and ordered him to appear before them immediately. Molodik crept up behind them and sharply hit one of the young thieves on the head. The scoundrel fell sharply to the floor, trying to regain consciousness and understand what had just happened to him. He began to moan loudly in pain and tried to understand who this mysterious person was. The pagan asked why he treated him so badly, but he never got a clear answer. The boy was actively recalling how they called his poor doppelganger worthless and stupid. Without thinking long, he answered as if the way the scoundrel looked just made him want to beat him up. That's why he was going to do a good job. The following events will take place in a huge area with an abandoned building located on it, where all suspicious persons usually gathered to conduct their methods of solving the situation. The head of the gang of bandits asked them what all this meant and what development of events was planned in this case. The boy mockingly asked them not to talk about the fact that they had come all this way just to catch him. The giant confidently called the scumbags present a herd of stubborn sheep from Peakson High School, and after his speech, he immediately demonstratively lit a cigarette. One of the scoundrels turned to him, speaking as if he had kept his shape well, and asked why he should maintain an athletic body in a fight. He smiled and asked if it was a real fight, because he thought it looked like one. The strongman answered as if he really knew everything much earlier, so he was confident in his strength and capabilities necessary for victory. Sharply turning away from him, the young man said that for this he had already brought someone who was much stronger than the school nobodies. The scoundrel laughed loudly, because he had only one person with him. But the second heathen was surprised when he saw a dangerous young man in front of him. Standing in front of them was the same Han-jun, a second-year student from Samjong High School whom everyone was very afraid of. He uncertainly asked if this was the same young Dokadai, and if the young master was on Sin-min's side. One of the young bandits turned to them and asked if they needed to bring 10 more people to the battle in order to win. The heathen quickly finished his cigarette and told him not to worry, because only the invited guest will fight, so they are already doomed to defeat. He also added that he would immediately join him later, to put an end to this and prove his power and invincibility forever. The pagan got very angry and ordered no one to run away, calling him bad and obscene words. Unexpectedly, the red-haired boy kicked him in the face with all his might, causing a great physical impact. Other minor criminals were already quickly running towards them to take revenge and loudly answered their crippled friend that they would definitely beat him. The scoundrel, without any hesitation, swung his leg and hit the arrogant schoolboy again with all his might to show who was the boss here. Molodik was not going to back down from the fight at all, so he immediately began to attack all the school children present in this room. Zdrovka calmly watched this scene, thinking about his next actions with these worthless school children. Unexpectedly, a guy in glasses quickly approached him, who clearly wanted to tell him something or to find out the essence of the situation that had just developed. Confused, the schoolboy asked what happened here. It was Gong John, a second-year student at Samjong High School who was also the leader of the S-clan. Molodik told him that the children from the E organization tried to beat someone up during the day and failed miserably. The giant was surprised by his words. After all, everything did not go according to plan. He got very angry and called the little one stupid because he did not understand what was the point of awakening a real bear in him. The pagan tried to call someone, but the number was busy. He was very interested in the whereabouts of the younger robbers and assumed that they were most likely in the billiard room as usual, doing nothing. Despite this, the pagan decided to check what was happening in the gambling room and was very surprised by what happened to them there. The red-haired boy quickly dealt with all the underage bandits and was confidently waiting for him. Parabok was clearly thinking about something, but he was just silent, observing the course of such a bad situation. The following events will take place in the billiard club. Someone asked in an uncertain voice what kind of unknown boy this was and why he appeared so suddenly. The bandit moaned loudly from the terrible pain, but asked why he was doing all this to them. Melodic remembered that, just by looking at him, you could tell that he was a worthless loser and did not deserve a chance for forgiveness at all. The mysterious young man asked as if he was asking because there was no reason for it and confirmed that he just wanted to be beaten hard and aggressively. One of the young bandits present confidently stood behind him, but cursed and asked how the unknown dared to abuse them so cruelly. The boy immediately understood that he was actively trying to attack him, so he did not think long about the next plan of action. The schoolboy grabbed a small red playing ball and sharply, swinging with all his might, hit the heathen's diarrhea with it. The other mutilated person began to use bad words and was about to swing at an unknown person to take revenge for what was done to his friends. Having let go of the chair, he did not understand at all where the mysterious man could have gone from them, so he was completely confused about what was happening to them. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly grabbed the black man's head and pulled him towards him to do something very bad to him. The young gentleman slammed his head against the pool table to cause great physical damage. Without any thought, the enraged young man quickly grabbed the huge stick, thinking of his next move in this situation. With a sharp swing, the mysterious character began to beat the heathen on the ass, causing physical damage to the insolent person. The scoundrel began to moan loudly in pain, but he could not do anything about it because he no longer had any strength. Another young bandit was already approaching behind him, having broken off a huge part of the queue for the game. After thinking for a while, he decided to attack the mysterious young man's body with a sharp and broken part. Unfortunately, the pagan did not have time to react and pierced the body of his friend, who did not expect such a reason from his friend. A red-haired young man hurried quickly to the pool club, riding down the road on a black motorcycle. He was clearly considering a plan of future actions to come out victorious in this situation, regardless of what might happen there. Powerful and loud screams and moans could be heard from the huge room of the pool club, as if someone was suffering from an incredible and hellish pain. The guy hit someone on the head with a heavy red layer to teach a nobody for such bad behavior. He was standing behind the scoundrel, who was leaning on his knees, not having any strength to fight or even defend himself. The pagan closed his eyes and tearfully begged not to touch him, to have mercy and just leave him alive. Unexpectedly, the mysterious young man kicked him in the jaw with all his might to punish him for all the bad deeds the loser had committed during his life. A young bandit was already standing behind the unknown person, who quickly and confidently took out a knife to inflict physical damage on him. Fortunately, the young man reacted quickly enough to this danger, so he elbowed the scoundrel in the nose to protect himself from the attack. Without thinking long, he abruptly grabbed the maimed man by the hair and lifted his face towards him to look at the maimed face that begged him to stop. The worthless juvenile bandit still begged not to touch him, but he replied as if he was beating him at his own request. He immediately remembered how he had done the same to others, enjoying this bad and horrible process. Therefore, he immediately had a question whether he could not do the same in relation to him. Immediately after his speech, the young man punched him in the face with all his might, trying to teach the rascal. The stranger was very angry with him because of all the unscrupulous things he had done with his friends. The guy actively continued to beat him so that he finally understood what it was like to feel unbearable pain from someone's actions. Unexpectedly, the wheels of the motorcycle stopped, which meant that the red-haired boy had finally arrived at his destination. The dangerous young man carefully looked at the building of the billiard club and studied the appearance of the premises from the outside. He slowly began to climb the steep stairs to reach the necessary destination. The bad boy was about to open the door, actively thinking about something that was bothering him very much. Unexpectedly, the stick that restrained and blocked the entrance to the room broke into two parts, completely opening the passage for him. When the redhead finally entered the room, he carefully looked at the young zombies, who were lying without any strength to continue the fight. A schoolboy in glasses wondered with surprise what had just happened in this strange place. He immediately approached the bandit and asked what happened to him and who did such terrible things to him. The other replied that he could not speak at all, for his face was completely beaten and bleeding, and the same thing happened to others who were present at this meeting. The guy with glasses could not understand at all who could bring such a strong and powerful young bandit to such a state. The red-haired boy suddenly turned his attention to the surveillance camera that was installed in the room and was supposed to record everything. Unexpectedly, a mysterious stranger appeared behind him, whose eyes glowed green and were directed at him. Unexpectedly, the mysterious young man sharply hit the scoundrel with his head on the pool table. At that moment, he heard that someone had opened the door after all and was already approaching it. The man actively called the phone number 112 and asked them to come to this place as soon as possible. He barely managed to turn off the circuit breakers so that the light appeared again in the room. Molodic confidently continued to stand behind the red-headed young bandit, carefully watching him. Unexpectedly, the whole billiard club shone brightly again because the light appeared in the room. The old man tried to cover his face with his hand because his eyes had just gotten used to the darkness and were not ready for such a thing. After regaining consciousness, the young thief saw that the mysterious young man was no longer in the room. In the pool club, the lights were bright and the sounds were loud enough to be heard on the street. A schoolboy in glasses asked what his friend was doing here and ordered him to pick up these young thugs and quickly run away from the scene. Rudy did not respond to his request at all because he was thinking about what happened today. The following events will take place in the greenhouse where all the thieves gather. Someone reported that they sent the poor man to the director's hospital. The giant asked if there was anyone who could explain what had happened. Unfortunately, at the moment, such a person was not found at all. The leader of the Sea clan confusedly explained that it was as if the electricity went out, so the cameras also did not record anything. It seemed as if someone had deliberately beaten the boys to death without feeling any remorse. The guy with the glasses asked if the only person who could do this was Kwan Dukek, considering that they tried to beat him this morning. The giant thought that if he kept quiet, how would he return to school after starting his boxing training? The scoundrel asked if the clan needed to interfere in this matter, but the Sir replied that there was no need for it, and ordered them not to disturb him without thinking, so they should just watch for now. The boy also knew that the strong man had started actively playing sports, so he was interested in whether the young gentleman knew about it. He remembered how the principal answered at first that he did not know who this schoolboy was, but he looked as if something was bothering him very much. Seeing a white-haired beauty in front of him, he decided that for now they would just watch the events from the side. The girl asked as if someone was the first to provoke them, but for some reason he ordered them just not to pay attention to it. The guy with the glasses answered as if the sir had just answered him and asked if they had any other choice. In addition, the schoolboy thought that the scoundrel felt this way because of some important detail. He heard that this strange boy has a very close relationship with the school's worthless Jin Tae. The young man quickly jumped over a high fence to quietly return home from the scene of events. Fortunately, the young man managed to do everything correctly, and he did not hurt himself at all by jumping off. Bending down, the young man immediately realized that they were actively waiting for him, because the hour was late. Raising his head, the young man realized that the secretary of his new family was standing in front of him. Magino handed him the glasses, saying that he had used them and hoped not to bother the sir again in the future. The man replied that he could always turn to him when he needed help. The gentleman ordered him to return quietly because the president and the lady were already sleeping. The guy began to move away from him, informing the secretary that he was going to leave. The young bodyguard watched the young man and thought about how he differed from the previous heir. The following events will take place with the heroes at Samcheon High School. It was morning outside and the weather was warm and sunny. Molodic confidently strode up the steps in the room to reach the right office. Unexpectedly, the strong man decided to greet him loudly, uttering the expression "Yo." The boy asked what kind of old-fashioned greeting it was. Magino was very surprised, because when he saw him, he realized that everything was fine with his friend, and the classmate with glasses also looked unharmed. The giant was surprised by his speech and asked what he was saying, and the neighbor at the desk replied that he had said that. The disciple remembered saying that he saw someone who looked like Jin Tae the night the villains came upon them. He asked his friend if he came to them on a scooter, but he pretended that he did not understand what he was talking about because he was going to meet his grandfather. Trying to distract himself, he remembered what he had said about his friend's hand and told him to just try to focus on his boxing training. Unexpectedly, someone called the young man very loudly so that it was heard throughout the corridor. A guy in glasses, whom he unfortunately did not remember at all, was approaching them from a far corner. A classmate in a vision accessory exhaled heavily because he did not want to cross paths with him. Magino, with complete incomprehension on his face, asked him who it was. The friend asked if he did not remember him and introduced the stranger as Gongjon, the leader of the Sea clan of Iljin. Strongman became very angry after hearing about this bad organization because he had very bad memories that were connected with them. The boy also noticed that he was exceptionally good at studies, and he excelled in all subjects, as if the boy was just as good at school, and that's why they never bothered him. Gongjon smiled broadly and asked if the student had prepared well for the mock exams. Magino was confused and answered, as if more or less ready to take these final exams. The scoundrel noticed that he had prepared perfectly, so he promised to wait for him with impatience. The friend did not understand at all what was happening to him, because, in his opinion, the heathen looked too devilish. The young gentleman did not understand his words about what he was looking forward to. Finally, it was time for lunch at school, so a classmate invited Jin Tae to go eat with him in the cafeteria. The guy replied that, unfortunately, cannot do this because he has training today. Friends were very surprised by such an answer. The old man informed them as if he had promised the girl to study together in the library. The guy couldn't believe that he was working with a young person. The new moon decided to leave them, and the strongman shouted after him to find out who Han Eiji is. He was very curious if his faithful companion was dating someone, so he began to cry because of his broken heart. The bespectacled desk neighbor thought about the fact that he still wanted to be alone with himself, as before. Unexpectedly, the good man ran after the boy, and another friend tried to catch up with him and understand where he was running away. At this time, these events were carefully observed by a young lady. No one could understand why there was no one in the library and whether school children did not want to go here at all. The young person threw the textbooks on the table and answered as if it was homework he asked her to do. She did not understand at all what it was and asked if he understood everything she explained to him last time. The boy answered uncertainly, as if it should have been quite easy. The beauty smiled and answered as if, to her surprise, the young man turned out to be very intelligent. Magino replied, as if he heard it often. The girl agreed with him and offered to do something more complicated, but he replied that he had already done them too. Hani Ji was very surprised because he actually performed them perfectly correctly, and she previously thought that he only knew how to fight. The guy confidently, with great pride, denied her. At this time, someone was actively approaching the library along the corridor. The second-year students of Samshun from the two dangerous Iljin clan were rapidly approaching the young people. The young man promised that he would study hard not only for his father or someone else, but for himself. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly opened the huge door to the library with his foot to do something bad. The young people were surprised at this turn of events because they could not have predicted such a thing. The white-haired beauty was angry and asked who this young girl was and told her to get out of here quickly because only Jin Jin Tae should remain in the room. If you have watched this far, I am very grateful to you. I hope you enjoyed this video because I put a lot of effort into creating it. I would be very grateful if you like this video and subscribe to the channel.